Today we're having the dialogue. Sawidians, I think people in South Africa generally look forward to the Sawid dialogue every year. Whatever happens at Sawid, I always say Sawid must never stop these dialogues because it's a way of living for some of us. The theme for today is role of arts, technology, and mental health in social transformation. So, the program ityebile. I don't know how I say it in English. Ityebile. The program inamafuta. It's fat, kind of, you know. It's a very nice program, I think, and it's quite diverse. But I think the most important thing is that we don't want you to just dialogue here today. We also want you to be empowered. We want you to pick up a nugget or two that you take out with you and you can be able to use in your own life. I do want to ask that this side keep a little bit quiet there. I know there's food, there's a lot of activities happening there. Let's just respect that we are starting the formal program and we have a number of our guests or our people who are in the program who have to speak. There is protocol I was informed about, and we have Minister Mpumlwana, who's a Minister for the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. We have Umama Tenji, Her Excellency Tenjiwe Mtintso, Her Excellency Mama Tenjiwe Mtintso, who is a Sawid trustee and a former ambassador to a number of countries, but they've written Namibia here. We also have Mpumlwana, who's the chairperson of Sawid. Oh yeah, Chairperson is here. I think there's other people who are written here that I don't see who are in the meeting today, so I'm not going to read them. We have Dr. Hazel Gooding as well, who is the Deputy Representative from UN Women. And if there's anyone else, we have the CEO. Oh, the VC, oh my goodness. We have the VC, our host. How can I forget our host? VC, apologies. It's not deliberate. Actually, we have VC, Professor Puleng LenkaBula, who is our host here at the university. And we have our CEO for Sawid, Usis Vatiswa, who I think she's part of the program as well. But before we start, we think we need to do a moment of silence. And if we can maybe just take a few seconds for a moment of silence. Thank you. And we may stand up. Thank you. Thank you. Without much saying, I'm going to invite Professor Puleng LenkaBula, who is the Principal and Vice-Chancellor at Unisa, to please come on stage and welcome all of us. Over to you, Professor LenkaBula. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm one of those who's musically challenged, so I thought I should invite the gentlemen in the choir to quickly support us, and I'm very appreciative. I came with my paper, but the young people who are into technology thought it was not Afrik, kosher, halal to then use my paper. So I'm going to try. It's only because of my vision, not so much because the technology is not. Program Director, Ms. Yoliswa Makasi, the founder and executive director in the Coaching Foundation. Let me also thank our colleagues who are making it important in our country to ensure that inclusivity is not something that we just talk about, but we enact, and therefore to ensure that it's not just those of us who can hear that will participate in this important event, and therefore Ms. Tuli Zikalala and Ms. Ngobile Mlweni, I'm very appreciative, Mlweni, I'm very appreciative. Our esteemed keynote speaker for today, Mem Mamulu Kubai, the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development. Can I request you to give a warm round of applause? Mam Thoko, you didn't teach us something. Let's try it. I'd like to hear the real ululations, colleagues. Not woo! Thank you, thank you. I think we're losing this important indigenous knowledge. It's a musical form, and I think those who are entrusted, let's look into learning how to do it better. I'm one of those who's left-handed in that, who's not able to do it. Let me recognize Me Thoko Mpumlwana, the Chairperson of the South African Women in Dialogue Trust, and members of Sawid trustees present. Let us also recognize Me Tenjiwe Mtinso, Sawid trustee and the former ambassador to multiple countries, a friend of the University of South Africa, and one of the previous keynotes of this important event. Let me recognize Melulu Kgorong, SA High Commissioner to Uganda, Dr. Diepullo Peku, Commissioner of the National Planning Commission, and members of the executive and extended management of the University of South Africa, And of course, we would not have done well if we do not acknowledge Mevati Somoya, the Executive Director of Sawid, Dr. Hazel Gooding, Deputy Representative of United Nations Women, Ms. Ria Piecha, the Chief Executive Officer of WDBT, our moderator, Dr. Peku. Let me also recognize the members of UNISA Women's Forum, the partner that has brought us into this important partnership, and therefore I'd like to recognize Dr. Sizakele Matlabe, Professor Farizani, the executive of UNISA Women's Forum. Our entertainers, representatives, students, political parties present, institutions of higher learning present, women in business, in communities, in civil society, members of the ecclesiastical community present, members of UNISA National Student Representative Council, representatives from various organizations, other members of the university communities, esteemed members of the audience, ladies and gentlemen, Sanbonan, Molweni, Dimacheroni, Lochani. I could hear that some people are trying. Kgorong, Salam alaikum. Salam. Thank you. I could hear that some people were trying, but we will try together as we reaffirm the imperative of African languages as important assets and resources for ensuring that we as women communicate and encounter science, our communities, and the invitation to being partners in the imagination of the future of women, having learned and taken the baton from those who fought for the liberation of the country, but also who made it important that the dignity of women, their agency, their voices, and their participation in forming and improving how society is organized, how knowledge is organized, how political systems and economic systems are organized, and how we women must be the centers and the sites of excellence within our communities. I therefore welcome you to UNISA, the home of leaders, as the Women's Month that is celebrated by us, Sawid, UN Women. The annual UNISA and Sawid dialogue is an important part of our collaboration as we continue to advocate for ensuring that women's empowerment, gender equality, gender parity, but also justice are quite at the center of who we are. It is a wonderful opportunity also to ask ourselves questions. Where are the areas that we women must navigate and insert ourselves in so that the development of our country, our continent, and the contributions by women in the global arena are embodied. Equally, it is wonderful to welcome you back, the Women's Development Banking Trust to our campus after the wonderful International Women's Day 2025 event, in which they played an important role when women focused on the financial inclusion for women and girls, but also for our communities, because any development that women are engendered in is not just about ourselves, but it is ourselves inextricably bound with our communities. UNISA is a home of leaders, a home of innovation, a place that creates platforms for contest of ideas with a view of building a better life for all in our country, continent, and the world. We have carved for ourselves the niche of being the university that's able to harness wisdom, knowledge, expertise, and experiences of others, including the international community that lives within our city, the city of Tshwane, which is the administrative capital of our country. This provides us with an avenue to influence and provide thought leadership on national, continental, and global affairs. We are gathered here today because the women of 1956 and those who came before them remind us and pave the way for the lives that we live today as women, but also our communities. They marched in 1956, they also marched in 1976, and they marched multiple times to ensure that women, their humanity, their dignity, and their agency, as I said, was an integral part of the anti-apartheid movement, but also the invitation, but also the call for the emancipatory project. Apart from the women in our country, the women from the continent have also fought hard to ensure that African women are freed from the chains of colonialism, imperialism, and apartheid. The Pan-African Women's Organization, PAWO, was established on 31st July 1962. And if you really understand the history of the continent of Africa, you'll see how women were visionary. Because in 1962, when they organized themselves to imagine and think about the development of the continent, not even the OAU was formed. A year before then, in 1963, only then the African Union, African Organization of African Unity, now the African Union, was formed. And it's very important, therefore, to really acknowledge women as pathfinders and as leaders who have always been visionary. I'm reminded of the story in Biblical Witness when they talk about women, how Jesus arose. They often tell us about ascension, but they never tell us that the people who testified the ascension were the women. And even when we reflect about it, we often remember the prophets and the 12, but we forget that the people who believed in the emancipatory process of ascension were the women. And therefore, at all material times, I'm using religious discourse for us to compare history, where the women of Africa were the first to organize, but they are never remembered in the history. And instead, it is only the OAU and the gentlemen who were contesting one another with the different schools of thoughts that we know, the two competing strands of the OAU that we are often told about, but not the power woman in 1962. This is a history lesson that invites us to be attentive. We stand on the shoulders of giants like Me Zanele Mbeki, who used her leadership to ensure that we don't just talk about history, about politics, about the social compact, but we are attentive to the economic systems and how women are embedded in imagining the economy. And therefore, I request that we give a round of applause. We also work in the footpaths of people like Me Sophie de Bruyn, the late Me Gertrude Chopin, the late Me Adelaide Tambo, the late Me Winnie Mandela. Even with the histories of contradictions, the best that women fought for must always be elevated. And I therefore request that we give these pathfinders, including those who are here around us. Let us learn from our own wells. And with these words, Memtinso, you may not know that we don't appreciate you only for being an ambassador, a diplomat of note. We appreciate you because you know what it means to fight in the bush as it is to create knowledge and policies that build society. Can I request a round of applause? If you didn't vote in 1994, colleagues, you may be very young. So we apologize that you don't know the experience. It is people like Mam Thoko and Mam Brigalia Bam who made it possible for you to cast your vote. If you only know her as Sawid, please remember that this democracy could not have been translated into what we witness. It was because Thoko Mpumlwana was one of the executives that made sure that the elections were free and fair. Can I request that we give a round of applause? And if you are a historian and a scholar and have not reflected or thought about curating the knowledge that they embody, you'll have done us injustice because we must drink from our own wells, as Audre Lorde reminds us. And therefore, the history and the work that they did must be recognized. Our discussion today, or the thematic area that we have chosen, is really looking into the role of the arts, technology, mental health in social and economic transformation. We just said social, but I think economic transformation is an important imperative. Women carry disproportionate burden of unpaid work or care work, and therefore it's our responsibility to look at how we advocate, we create opportunities for policy reforms or policy revolutions to look at how care work, how women's work, how the burden of unpaid work can be at least acknowledged, transformed, and that's the sustenance of women in the social and economic development are affirmed. The second aspect that I think is important is that the substantive deficit in care policies, the services and infrastructures across the world, including our country, require us to constantly ensure that we are actively engaged but not just complaining on social media. It is our roles when we are here together that we ensure that we participate and we call for economic transformation to undo the cultural systems that negate the dignity of women, but also we invite cultural revolution that recognizes the sacrosanct dignity of women and girls in our society and therefore the roles that they can play. As we know in our own lives, women carry the burden of not only the care work, but also of building economies, of building institutions, of caring for families. And sometimes the burden of this work may lead into legacies of mental health that require our attention. It is not just the burden of the work that we are almost inundated with as women, but it is also the legacies of colonialism, of apartheid, of patriarchy, of kyriarchy, where women are constantly exposed to being trampled upon. And therefore, it's our consistent and constant need to ensure that the social stigma that are associated with mental health problems are made harder for those who consistently use health, mental health, and marginalization of women. Sawid has really invited us to think about and to center mental health as an important imperative for us to rally around each other to ensure that women's mental health and our social and communities' mental health is resourced, and that we work together to looking at procedures, processes, systems, policies that enable us to ensure that we work with dignity and we work with the commitment that our health will be supported, that our mental health will become important resources. Finally, it is a well-known fact that technology has become an important arena for our engagements as humanity, for development, and for the arts. And therefore, as we reflect on the arts, we should be asking the questions, how are we using technology to optimize and help, especially women in the arts and technology? I'm not going to speak about this because we have a keynote speaker who is here to unravel the contradictions of the theme that has been tabled at us, but also to remind and inspire us on what has to happen into the future. Ms. Bongile Kumalo sang at several UNISA events. Ms. Miriam Makeba has been acknowledged by UNISA. Mpumlwana was also here to remind us about the place of ensuring that children and children's books through the Poku project are asserted. And therefore, as we think about women, let's not forget her. And I think for me, one of the young musicians who has made it important that music is not only for entertainment, but it carries a lot of meaning, inviting us into strengthening democracy, is Simphiwe Dana. I'd like as well for us to acknowledge her. Finally, Finally, I think we must take the wisdom of Ms. Bongile Khumalo, who reminded us that the tendency of history is to make prominent women seem like exceptions. The war leader, Mkabayi, is another example. We hide women's part in decision-making, and that leads to us minimizing the importance of what our mothers, our grandmothers, our aunts used to do, even in the home. This is an invitation that I hope this is an invitation that I hope is inviting us to a social history, a social memorialization, a social acknowledgement of the work that women do. And in particular, please join me to celebrate the young leader of youth, the Minister of Justice, the woman who put her hand to be considered in this country as one of the deputies in the highest echelons of our country. Because if we don't raise our hands, colleagues, nobody will raise them for us. And I think we must encourage all young women at all material times to be inspired by Minister Kubai, because you don't know what that courage meant for many young women in the different sectors of our country, that we as women must raise our hands, and when we are given opportunities, use it to transform our society. We invite you, Minister, at all material times, I'm not the program director, we invite you at all material times not to shy, because your courage has inspired many women to look at the roles that they can play in society. And once again, please do it again. We are here to support. Thank you. All the best.
Hi, the steps.
Check this out. I think you can put it there for the...
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prof. I did something very bad. I did not introduce you properly. And I apologize for that, because the way I like educated people, I just have to speak about your qualifications at least. She's saying no, but I'm going to do it either way. I'm the program director. So she's an African to the core, and of South Africa and Lesotho descent. She has a doctorate in ethics. This is theology and philosophy in brackets, with specialization in ethics of the economy, ecology and politics, which is social ethics, from the University of South Africa. So she's homemade. Thank you very much, Prof. I've been asked, may I please request Ma'am Thoko and the CEO, I believe so, to come to the stage, because they're going to be lighting the candle. No, Ma'am Thoko, the CEO, and Professor LenkaBula to come to the stage to light the candle. In the meantime, that's the instruction I was given, ma'am. So, okay, let me just, sorry, Sissy, let me just make this one announcement. Somebody has lost her car keys and a phone. So if you bump into the car keys and the phone, please bring them to us here so that she's not inconvenienced. Thank you very much. Yes, Mama, over to you. Yeah, ne? I was even scared of saying Bopa to those mothers from that corner. I know them. Thank you very much. The candles are now on, and I was just doing my research what lighting the candle means. It means different things to different people, and I think you can identify with something. It's about light overcoming darkness. It's about remembrance. It's about prayer and spirituality. It's about life and renewal. It's about purification. It's about guidance. I think each one of us will find something that resonates with us in terms of the lighting of the candle ceremony. I'm going to now move on and invite Miss Vatiswamoya to please come and share with us about the objectives of this gathering, and I will just introduce a little bit. She is an accomplished leader and strategic transformation expert, currently serving as an executive director of Sawid, and she is also an independent senior consultant specializing in change management, transformation, and leadership. She has a bachelor's degree in social science, industrial psychology, and economics, and a postgraduate diploma in enterprise management from Rhodes University. The rest you will hear from her during tea time. Thank you very much. I have 2 phones and keys. This is what is called you pray a living God. Thank you very much for the person who picked them up and brought to us. Thank you. Over to you, Sis Fati.
Good morning. Morning. I like the vibe for us already. I like it for us. That's the new English, ne? So we must keep up with the new English. So I like it for us. I have a different song. I hope most of you know it. And I think there's a message I like about it. Leli lithi ndimncinci ndingaka domelele ngawamandla kaThixo domelele ndimncinci ndingaka ngawamandla kaThixo domelele ndingaka ngawamandla kaThixo And of course, I have to acknowledge those that are not singing it because they are listening to the part that says ndimncinci ndingaka. And they are fighting with that. Am I really mncinci? You know, does this resonate? Hey, you are mncinci man. And yes, you have that power. I think that's the part I love about it. Ndomelele, in various spaces of our lives as women, somelele. And I want you to give yourselves a round of applause for that. Program director Sandy introduced Sileke, so I'm not going to go through that one again. Thank you so much, program director. And I'm tempted to also stand on the observed protocol and greet all our esteemed guests and all of you as beautiful women of Sawid and our Unisa colleagues. I was told everybody is a Sawidian, so I don't want to even start saying ubani ngapha. We are all Sawidians right now. We agree, ne? Yes. As Sawid, we always look forward to this coming together. There's so many things that we do. Umathe already knows me for the phrase I use with the team when I say, hey, Kanime Kancinci, we are not trying to boil the ocean here. Why are we trying to do so many things as Sawid? And she uses that phrase a lot now. Because we are trying to do so many things, because there's so much to be done. But for some reason, this particular dialogue, we talk about it from beginning of the year. We're already talking about it. I don't know why we talk about it and single it out in terms of, the Unisa-Sawid dialogue is going to happen in August. And in my view, I think it's twofold. It's probably the excitement, that excitement, that you are used to doing every year, and you're going to do it again. But I also think it's the anxiety of what it is that we will talk about this particular year. Because it's a case of we did it last year, so what are we going to talk about this year that we haven't talked about before? Now, of course, when we look around us, we realize that even if we repeat the things that we have talked about before, there's not a problem with that, because we are a country and a society that seems to take two steps forward, only to take 5 steps backwards. So which means the information can never be redundant. It requires to be repeated. And this time we thought about it long and hard, because still we want to come up with different angles, because as much as we may be repeating the information, we still want to say, so what else have we not tried? Because we are just looking for these solutions. Okay, we tried this one, but what else can we try now? So we have to look at different angles, because this problem, and you then have to approach it from different angles. Now, if you talk about mental health in my view is something that we talk about, but I'm not sure if in talking about it, we really, really talk about it, to the extent where even the stigma around it is removed. How many of us in this room, and be honest, when you hear that somebody has been admitted for 21 days at a mental care facility, how many of us think we are fine? Yeah? Am I the only one? I'm not. Ne? Yes, let's be honest with ourselves. Uba, the immediate thought is, what's going on with her or him? Is he going to be okay? If he comes back and works with us, is he still going to be fine? Deep down, and yes, as you think about it in that way, you correct yourself, because your conscience says, no, be positive, think about it the right way. Because that's the stigma. So it therefore means, even as we are talking about mental health, we are talking about it superficially. Again, how many of us see arts as purely entertainment? I'm one of those people who say, artists, bless you, my brothers. Artists, we always say they're very artsy. They're spiritual. Ne? And yes, I think they are. Because there's a message that they are trying to land. But to what extent are we receiving that message? To what extent are we using that message to bring transformative change? Do we only watch and partake in arts just for purposes of entertainment, or for purposes of facilitating transformative change? Technology is aggressively upon us. I just heard recently, AI, Songe, now we talk about AI, we use AI for just about anything. I recently heard that it can even help you pack your luggage if you are going on a trip. You just say, ChatGPT, I'm going on a trip, I've got these clothing items, tell me how to mix them up. Huh? Try it. So can you imagine? That's AI for you. What else will it not be doing in years to come? Now the biggest question is, are we on par with all of this, to the extent that we intentionally harness our knowledge towards positive and transformation change? How do we ensure that our care economy strategy is also evolving and transformative enough to be relevant to all these challenges of an ever-evolving society. We recently had a workshop with some social workers and experts in the social development space, and one of the things they were telling us is we need to really talk about the social worker of the future. Because the social worker of the future is the one that needs to have the skills that enable them to effectively deal and address today's care requirements. We're not going to address today's care requirements with how we addressed them before, with all the stereotypes that we have. So this dialogue today recognizes that we are constantly in a state of catching up. We're trying to catch our breaths because we think we are making strides, and then we're like, but then we realize that, things are still rapidly changing, therefore keep running. You don't even have time to catch your breath, sit down and say, let me drink water. Because as you are drinking water, something else is changing. So you need to be back in the race again. So the world is transforming faster than our own pace, and we must therefore be constantly seeking solutions that will help us to thrive. But the important part for all of you being here today is that as we seek for those solutions, what I'd like to challenge you today on is that don't be stubborn when those solutions require you to change yourself, and be the voices and champions of the change in your immediate community. Because if you are stubborn, then we know that the solutions are there, but the ones that are empowered to implement the solutions are not implementing the solutions because they make us uncomfortable. Because now we need to change ourselves. So we need to know that we have all the conversations that will happen today here. They are meant to ask each and every one of us, how are we going to change ourselves? Because that is the gift we will give to our children and our grandchildren. We are not doing this for us anymore. Some of us are already on the other side. So we are doing it for them. So think about it that way. Every time you want to be stubborn about changing yourself, think about it, what it means for that grandchild of yours. But having said that, we are here to celebrate because strides have been made. Beautiful strides and progress has been made. And it is important that every time we come together here, we take a moment and say, wow, well done. Well done. So I actually want to challenge you to the sister that's sitting next to you, give them a pat on the back and say, well done. Right, so, yeah, and even for the parts that you said, which I didn't ask you to say, but I know that they were also positive, yeah? You added your own spice there, say, well done, I remember you did this and did that. So, yes, that's also welcome as well. So, we invite you then, fellow sisters, fellow Sawidians, to use this dialogue not only as a platform to celebrate, but to listen. The agenda, the program is very, very rich. We have speakers that are going to impart not only knowledge, but tools that we can use so that we can immediately get out of this dialogue and say there's a difference I can make tomorrow to the next person. It doesn't have to be big. Remember I said, I'm not about boiling the ocean. It doesn't have to be big. But there's a difference that you can make. So we invite you to listen, engage with the content, challenge yourself, and determine what it is that you will do differently so that 50 years to come, Professor, when this dialogue will still be happening and none of us will be there, the children that will be attending the dialogue, maybe I'll still be there but coming in with my stick, but they will be saying, we are standing on the shoulders of giants that made this possible for us. I wish you a wonderful and fruitful dialogue. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, CEO. Some of my fun facts about Sawid is the dialogue method that is being used and women leading the conversations. So I would like to know as well, when you are speaking, I mean, some of the people who have been attending these dialogues forever. Why do you keep on coming back? What is it? What is fun about being here? Because also learning has a component of fun. I just want to ask the poet to say that you will speak after the minister. I mean, you will do your thing after the minister has spoken. So be ready for that. And I want to invite Dr. Hazel Gooding, Deputy Representative from the UN Women, who's going to give a message of support, and then I'm going to, the Minister will be next one after that. I have an apology. Dr. Ms. Ria Pierre is not able to join us. And lastly, I want to acknowledge that we have Dr. Peko, who's also a part of the dialogue, but she is joined virtually. Thank you. Over to you, Madam. Thank you.
No, I'm good. Thank you, Program Director. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. So let's try something. The UN languages, we have 6. We'll try 2 more apart from English. Bonjour. Buenos dias. Great job. Let's give ourselves a round of applause. It is indeed a pleasure to be among you, among such distinguished partners. And as I stand on the existing protocols, I just wanted to acknowledge the Honorable Minister and the distinguished leadership of Unisa-Sawid. Thank you so much for the opportunity to join you here today. I don't say it lightly when I say I'm indeed humbled. And it's an honor also to deliver this message of support on behalf of the representative of UN Women's South Africa office based in Pretoria. It's also a great opportunity to commemorate Women's Month in this way and to use the moment to reflect on the progress made as well as to renew our commitment to this cause. It is also a moment to honor the resilience, the courage, the leadership, and the contributions that were made so far by women, many of whom are represented here, all of you, in partnership with our brothers here, also represented in the room, and the advancement that has been made so far in South Africa. This year, as you all know, it marks the 30th year since the establishment of the global framework for gender equality. I'm hoping you all know what that is. As UN Women, we continue to be guided by that framework, the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. So moments like these allow us to reflect on areas where progress has been made and where we are actually lagging behind. The Beijing Declaration shines the spotlight on 12 critical areas of concern. And Prof. LenkaBula, when you were talking about making that linkage to making that reference to the biblical history, I was wondering whether that number 12 had any specific significance. Specifically relevant to this gathering when it comes to women in health, women in the media and education, as well as training. We speak about the arts, technology, and mental health. Yes, they are all important, but they're simply not peripheral issues. They're all central to achieving gender equality and transformational change. Artistic expressions are part of our everyday lives, especially when we want to rest and seek inspiration. But beyond entertainment, they also shape our beliefs, they shape our thoughts and ideas. One could consider the crucial role artists like Miriam Makeba played on the world stage as a civil rights activist in the struggle against apartheid, to see that women on the world stage as civil rights activists in the struggle against apartheid, where we see that they have historically challenged social norms and amplified the voice of marginalized experiences. In post-apartheid South Africa, the arts have a key role to play, not only in telling collective stories, but in actually promoting healing, identity, and resilience. I'm sure you would all agree with me when I say that technology actually holds transformative power for women's empowerment. Yet we face a critical gap between promise and practice. Globally, data tell us that a notable 70% of countries are boosting science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, as well as digital skills among women and girls. However, we remain slow in translating these educational gains among women and girls for better jobs, for better economic opportunities, and I can go on and on. I'm sure we also can agree that when we bridged that digital gender gap and provide equal access to digital technology, financial services, markets, and networks, we will definitely unlock extraordinary potential. We see South African women entrepreneurs using mobile platforms to reach global markets, young women coding solutions for local challenges, and mothers accessing vital services through digital channels. Technology has become truly transformative when women aren't just users, but creators, innovators, and leaders shaping our digital future. While we acknowledge that with advancement, there are potential issues around harming our women and girls, around promoting violence among women and girls, we need to be sure that we continue to have a commitment, a collective commitment as partners to ensure that women actually fully reap the economic benefits of the digital revolution, accessing new skills, opportunities, and services that will drive both individual empowerment and national prosperity. We can provide women with all the opportunities needed to equalize our society, but we know that if they are not well, they cannot actually seize those opportunities to thrive. You know, I thought about, listening to the earlier speeches when we hear about the stigmas, and we know and experience the stigma around mental health. That when we think of our overall health, if we break an arm or we break a leg, we go to make sure that we have the medical attention that is required. What's the difference when it comes to our brain? Isn't our brain part of our body? Women's health is one of the 12 critical areas of the Beijing Declaration because women need to be healthy to realize our full potential. This includes proper nutrition, sexual and reproductive rights, freedom from violence, as I mentioned earlier, and mental health. Women's mental health and well-being are not luxuries. They are the foundation of activism, leadership, and care work. As we take a closer look at how to accelerate in the unfinished business of Beijing, let us look together at these issues in a holistic manner, from head to toe, as we double our commitment and investment in women's creativity, digital access, and mental health as human rights issues and drivers of sustainable change. Friends, brothers and sisters, we need each other. None of this can be achieved alone. And it's so wonderful again to see this demonstrated in this room, academia, civil society, international community, diplomats, leaders from all sectors. I want to conclude by honoring the incredible legacy of the University of South Africa, of Sawid, and the work that you all continue to do together in South Africa's women's movement. Organizations like these, people like you, are the cornerstones of our society, driving change, offering hope, and delivering critical support to women, girls, boys and girls, all genders, and all of our communities. Keep up this amazing work. La luta continua.
Thank you, Doc, so much. Without pausing, I am going to introduce our keynote address briefly. It is my sister, Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Mpumlwana Kubai. Just a little bit about Mpumlwana Kubai. She is a minister, of course. Firstly, before she is a minister, she is a National Executive Committee member of the African National Congress. And she is also in the National Working Committee. She previously also chaired the ANC Economic Transformation Subcommittee, but Bamkeeper. I wonder and then I also just want to say that she has held a number of portfolios as a minister, but also qualification-wise, education-wise, she has a BA degree from Vista University. She has a master's in public and development management from UJ, and she has a PhD in progress. It's still in progress. Her research is focusing on state-owned enterprises and corporate governance. I'm looking forward to the findings and recommendations of that PhD. I noticed earlier on that Mpumlwana joined us, and I do want to acknowledge Ambassador Mpumlwana. Thank you very much. So, Mpumlwana Kubai, you are welcome on stage. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Mama, ongelakho mama, ongelakho mama, engelakho mama, engelakho mama. Thank you very much. Mama, ongelakho mama. Mama, ongelakho mama. Thank you very much. Program director, I'll get into trouble. Those are my mothers that raised me in the ANC Women's League and ANC in Johannesburg. So I needed to acknowledge them as well. From Middle and CAS, where I was born. Thank you very much, Program Director, my dear sister. I don't know if how many of you, as I do the acknowledgement, know how much this room is so rich. I'm looking across and I'm seeing such vast knowledge, because every table as I stand here, Prof, I'm seeing somebody I know, and I know something about them that is incredible. So I hope as you are sitting in those tables, you talk to people around, you are going to learn a lot. There's incredible women in this room. Malibongwe. Igama lamakhosikazi. Thank you. She's a trailblazer in her own right, the program director, the former DG of Public Service and Administration, a no-nonsense person, by the way. Nathi besimazi as my ministers. Let me acknowledge the Vice-Chancellor and Principal of Unisa, Prof. Puleng, LenkaBula. Thank you very much for hosting us. Indeed, as well, a trailblazer. You're doing a fantastic job. We shouldn't take that away and not miss an opportunity to acknowledge you. Thank you and thank you for that. Mpumlwana, Thoko Mpumlwana, enkosi kakhulu mama. Good to see you again today. That's what I'm saying, you know, I'm overwhelmed because I'm seeing people I've seen over time, I've known over time and worked with, but also looked up to as a young woman growing in this country. Sawid trustee and ambassador, Thenjiwe Mthinji, our leader in the African National Congress, a freedom fighter. It's not former ambassador. There's no former ambassador program director. Once an ambassador, always an ambassador. So it's Ambassador Thenjiwe Mthinji. Ambassador Lulu Tlingwane as well, our mother, we grew under as well, under this movement of ours. Who's a former minister, by the way, trailblazer as well. That's what I'm saying. There's so many people here that we really can learn so much, and that many of us, as we grew up, looked up to. Deputy Representative of UN Women, Dr. Gooden. National Planning Commissioner, Dr. Peku, who's joined us virtually. Executive Director at Sawid, Vati Somwe. Deputy Chairperson, Unisa Women's Forum, Dr. Sizakele Matlabe, and all the members of the forum at Unisa. All Sawid members. I saw my sister as well, Griselda, here, who joined us as well. Another trailblazer, an activist in women issues. I think one needs to acknowledge that. And many other members of the, there's no way I cannot say this. I know I'm minister, I'm here in my capacity. But members of the ANC Women's League, Malibong, I'm a member. Bakhono mama. Good morning, everyone. Without meaningful engagements that can lead to real change, the month of August can easily be reduced to a month in which we organize routine events in the name of celebrating women. The theme of today's event, which focuses on the topic, the role of arts, technology, and mental health in social transformation hits at the core of the issues that, if properly dealt with, can help us transform our society towards a gender-equal society. It is for this reason that I'm delighted to join you to engage in this very important societal discourse, whose relevance will remain for as long as women remain victims of gender biasness in our society. Let me thank the organizers for the topic and the issues that they are trying to deal with, and they are inviting us to focus on, but to being amongst this rich environment, but also for some of us becoming a revival as leaders who, in the environment that we lead, it's not easy. Women are born into this world with two choices. The first one is either you fight to bring down the walls created by gender bias and patriarchy, or to accept being a second-class citizen after their male counterparts in our society, and more importantly, in our country. For those of us who have chosen to fight, we have our work cut out for us. Gender inequality is an injustice that cannot be left unattended. Just like the beneficiaries of capitalism, the beneficiaries of patriarchy and gender inequality have convinced themselves that the world was created fully formed with the religious, cultural practices, structures, and institutions that are designed to place women at the disadvantage, but to their advantage. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a responsibility to remind men and those who defend gender inequality that society evolved over time, and in that time, structure and practice were created that have placed men in powerful positions as compared to women. We have to fight for the creation of a new structure or structures and practices that will make gender equality a reality. Without changing structures of society, women will remain trapped within the barriers from which they cannot escape, and if they do not find themselves alone and lonely at the top, nowhere else are the barriers of women visible than within organization, private and public. According to an article titled, I quote, "An Invisible Bias with Real Implications for Women Leaders," unquote, published on the London School of Economics website, summarized 4 types of barriers that women face as follows. The first one, a lack of role models for women. Women have fewer opportunities to see women leaders that they can emulate because every sector, private, public, and social, men dominate senior leadership positions. So our girl children are rising up, young women that we have, are rising up having less people to look up to as leaders. What they have in front of them consistently is men who are in leadership position. The second area is a barrier: gendered career paths and gendered work. Gendered career paths encompass male-dominated professions, which include computer engineering, architecture, surgery, and gendered work includes office housework, as well as domestic responsibilities allocated to women. In the sector that I lead, one of the issues that we're trying to deal with, and that's why we talk about the sector code, is that when you look at legal practitioners, you are going to find female legal practitioners being in the labor space, fighting for labor matters, fighting for family issues, family courts. You will never find them in the competition law, commercial law, maritime law, which are actually making a lot of money. So when you compare what they are relegated to doing, it's literally that per transaction they can make 2,000 to 5,000, whereas their male counterpart, in terms of their income, when they do one case of maritime, can be even per hour 35,000. So there's huge differences that are systematic in our society. That's why we talk about careers. So it's just not only about Just that. And even when we talk about careers, where legislation has been put in place, where policies have been put in place, you still find other barriers. Take an example, I'm a former Minister of Human Settlements. We took a decision to do a 40% set aside for women in construction so that they can get opportunities. What did women get after getting their contracts? Construction mafias arriving on their sites, disrupting their site and threatening to rape them, and therefore abandoning the opportunity and leaving sites, which those projects then eventually became men projects. This is the reality of how the barriers in careers are. So, and I'll come to the issue because many say we've not done much. We've done a lot from a policy point of view, from programs point of view, but we've got to work together to be able to break what we have in our society. Another area, women's lack of access to network and sponsors. There are fewer sponsors for women than there are for men, and women's network are different from men's network. A typical example that we talk about every time, you have two teams in South Africa of soccer, Bafana Bafana and Banyana Banyana. Banyana Banyana does very well every time, but there are no sponsors for them. Bafana Bafana loses every time. They have even taught us arithmetics and mathematics, because every time they are in a tournament, we must say if 1 is equal to 2 minus 3, we are. Because that's what happens. If they lose this one and the other club wins, it means they have 3 or 2 points, therefore they can qualify. But despite that poor performance over time, they have sponsors. And this is the reality, that women find themselves in a democratic society where we have policies, even around gender pay. Not that we don't have these policies, we have the legislation. But those who have the means, for example, they just don't want to pay. Double binds as the last barrier I want to reflect. There are many others, but I selected these ones. Women leaders often find themselves walking a tightrope between being seen as overly feminine, which makes them seem likable but not as competent, or overly masculine, which makes them seem competent but not well liked. Yet in order to get ahead, women need to be both competent and likable. When you are assertive, you are said to be arrogant. And your male counterpart, same attribute, will be clapped for. But for a woman, such attribute will be frowned upon. Many of women who are here today can attest to having experienced 1 or 2 of the 4 barriers that I've just mentioned. Society has largely accepted that the world is structured in a way that makes these barriers to persist unchallenged in our society. And also, I think one of the issues there, so they are largely accepted that in our world is structured in a way that they are accepted without being challenged, and we don't challenge them, even ourselves as women. Inevitably, to make the creation of gender equality possible, these barriers must fall. As we use it, as young people will say, they have to fall for us to build a better society. It was Karl Marx, when he was reflecting on the failure of the Paris Commune, in which workers failed to seize power, who said, I quote, "But the working class cannot simply lay hold of the ready-made state machinery and wield it for its own purpose," unquote. Marx's idea was that the working class must break up, smash the ready-made state machinery, and not confine itself merely to laying hold of it. So you can't want to inherit something that is not favorable to you. You've got to destroy it and recreate. Because in that way, then you will be able to get the benefit. Because what currently exists is not suitable for women. That's the reality. And that's what Karl Marx speaks about here. Similarly, again, The world today is stratified in such a way that it favors men. And in such a world, women cannot lay hold of that. The only way we have to rid off the world of the culture of gender bias in our society so that we don't continue to have the dominance of men. This means that we as society, and I say we as society, because the fight for gender equality is not a women's fight. It's also men that must fight it because it's justified. We've got to find a way that we must integrate into existing power structures. We must be able to redesign the power structures in our society. How can we do this? What are the areas? One of the issues that, as the topic calls upon us, that I thought, let me zoom into it, is the technology. The rapid technological changes that have reshaped how the world works, that have been brought about by technologies such as artificial intelligence, have created avenues through which women can redesign the structure of power. There is an opportunity to place a robust gender mainstreaming perspective in technology and innovation by looking at how digitization has exacerbated power asymmetries between the owners and the users of digital devices, and taking measures to distribute the benefits of digitization more equally. Through the widened access to information and communication technologies, the digital divide that has mostly kept women and girls out the digital universe has been reduced. But it's not the end, and I'll come to it. Artificial intelligence, which relies on existing data, train models, creates, and I say this because, Prof, you are a university, and you can give us an opportunity to change what is happening, that we fear is going to continue to happen, especially with technology. So when you look at the train models created currently, the reality that we see is that the world has a gender equality problem, and without intervention, artificial intelligence mirrors the gender bias currently existing in our society. A study by the Berkeley Haas Center of Equality and Gender and Leadership analyzed 133 AI systems across different industries, and they found that about 44% of them showed already gender bias, and 25% exhibited both gender and racial bias. According to the UN Global Education Monitoring Report, female access to education is still lower than male, with probably even lower access for disabled girls and women. About 2/3 of majority world countries have gender parity in primary education, with probably less equity at higher levels. The unequal access to education continues to produce gender bias educational outcomes, and this also reflected in the poor participation of women in areas that are associated with technology. And again, when we look at our basic education statistics and higher education post-schooling, you'd see that majority of the young girls that are enrolling at grade 1, when you go and look at them at grade 12, after 12 years, they start to diminish. It becomes even worse. We see the many who are top, but the overall number is not the exact what we want. But then when you go to post-schooling level, those that are did matric, numbers in higher percentage in our front pages, being young girls, are diminishing. We don't find them at graduation time. This is what we must be concerned about. Where are these girls going? What becomes the future tomorrow of our country when these young girls are missing in this value chain, in this system of education? And that's why the importance of emphasizing on education again, because if we are to look at technology, then institutions of higher learning have to be conscious and drive a purpose and a gender lens-driven education system. That even in these AIs, in the STEM subjects, we must find girls and we must support them. For example, that there is estimated that globally 71% of AI-skilled workers are men already. And just 29% globally are women, a 42% point gender gap in a new area of technology. And that's why I'm calling for consciousness in how we approach interventions. Without intervention, the gender inequality it's reproducing itself, even in areas where we have an opportunity to achieve gender equality. More worryingly, according to the 2024 GSMA report, the mobile internet gender gap in South Africa remains stubbornly a reality. It is estimated that women are still 14% less than men to use mobile internet in our country. This is going into the internet on our phones. So we have less than 14% compared to men in our country. Now, this partly explains why statistics show that self-employed women in our country are more likely to be found in the informal sector compared to self-employed men who are predominantly found in the formal sector. So ours, females in our country who are saying that they are self-employed, they are informal traders. We find them in the taxi ranks outside our schools selling. While male counterparts, when they say they are self-employed, they have SMMEs, they have companies that they are running. This is another area that we've got to deal with. With limited access to internet, women have limited information, which includes information about economic opportunities. There are steps that we can take to reverse these trends, and this includes, but not limited, the following. We have to deliberately and consciously increase access to education for young girls. We must provide girls and young women with access to equal. We must provide girls and young women with access to quality education and resources in the STEM fields. These are your science, technology, engineering, and mathematical fields. We need to see more and more women. When I was Minister of Science and Technology, I used to drive a program of young girls in STEM, going to high schools to encourage them. And that's why most of us as women in our communities, where we are SGBs, we must fight for mathematics to be provided in the schools of our children, not arithmetics. We must not allow management of the school to remove mathematics, because they do that in some of the areas because they are chasing pass rate. They want 100% pass rate because they know that mathematics is a bit difficult. It might be difficult. With support, these children will make it. But it's even worse and detriment for our country when we have these children out of mathematics. We perpetuate inequality. And that's why we are in the SGPs, in our communities. This is the decisions that we must influence, because legislation empowers us to make these decisions in the SGPs. Second area, building supportive ecosystems. We need to create environments that supports women's participation and advancement in tech sectors through policy, societal support, and workplace initiatives. So part of what we should be able to do as well, maybe let me encourage Sawid to do, have a session and call all the tech guys. Your mobile network operators, MTN, Vodacom, the chairperson of the portfolio is a young woman who's very active in Parliament in technology. The DG of Technology, Communication and Digital Technologies is a woman. We call them and say, what are the bias or what are the programs you have for women and young women in your sector? Because we know this is what we need to drive. It's a sector that is critical to go forward. What is it that we have? And we challenge them. So I'm willing to be a supporter of that program because I'm really passionate about being in that space. having as well served in the Global AI Platform Committee of World Economic Forum, because we've got to get our girls back into technology, into maths and engineering. That's what the future is about. The future of work, it's there. The last point in the 3 areas of intervention, which I do believe sometimes it looks easier, but not so easy. Promoting women leadership. When someone looks at it, will say it's simple. It's not. We need to encourage, but for me, most importantly, support women and girls to pursue and take on leadership roles in our country. Because we've got to reshape our country. As I say, emphasis for me is on the support. Not because women are weak, but because they are attacked unnecessarily. They get easily isolated because of limited opportunities of networking due to our social structure. You know, in an environment, and maybe Prof will say, in an environment of work, many of us are working. We leave our work, I go to work from morning, 8 o'clock, I'm in meetings, I'm in boardrooms, I'm working. At 5 o'clock, I'm already thinking about my children and their supper. I rush home. My male counterpart passes by the bar and meet with the counterparts, others, and share ideas. It's a networking session. As a woman, I don't have that opportunity because the social structure does not allow me to. They go to play golf. I don't have the opportunity to go and play golf. And there are these things that we used to have in our society. Our mothers had the society. And we are killing them. Those were the social support structures for women in our communities. Because you could come together and share ideas, share your pain. Now, we've killed these social structures that exist in society, Harasaya, Harasanatsona. I don't know in Xhosa what are they called, and those who are good. I know in our townships there. Zomgalelo, Intozinjan. And they were not just about contributing because there's going to be a funeral. Because every month you had an opportunity to come together and share. And at times share a meal. And spend a Sunday afternoon together as women. This is called networking in English. These are opportunities that men create for themselves. Let's take in a work environment in an office. They go out, hey, can we go to the bar? Yes, yes, yes. Everybody goes to a bar. And because as well, our society has demonized bars for women. Let's be honest. When we grow up, my mother used to tell me never go to a bar. A tavern. No to tavern. I have no girl that is going to a tavern. So even if they can talk about going to a tavern, I would not see it as a suitable place for me. So I would not go. When they arrive there, they share about a problem that happened today at work. In the midst, then they help the other one to find a solution. Tomorrow you see this colleague of yours that you were ahead of is now ahead because a tavern session happened. And I say this thing because women leaders are harshly judged compared to their counterparts. They can perform better. They can put more efforts and more hours. Just a small thing done by your male counterpart, it gets blown out. Small. And that's why I said, this issue of promoting and supporting women leadership, from a face value, it looks simple. It's not. Because in our organization and institutions, There are systems. There's an infrastructure that has been built over time that favors men. That literally most of the time even break down strong women. We've seen it. We can count, many of us sitting in this room, women we have seen crash down, that we thought they were strong. They had to wake up in the morning, cry the whole night, wake up, put up a makeup, put a lipstick and stand in front, pretend to be okay, when they are dying and there's no support. Now, properly disseminated amongst women and girls, technology has a capacity to transform our society and social reality of women and girls, giving them control of their destiny. Gender bias is a product of organized power structures that were consciously designed to favor men. Hannah Arendt observed that, I quote, "Power corresponds to the human ability not just to act, but to act in consent. Power is never the property of an individual. It belongs to a group and remains in existence only so long as the group keeps together. When we say of somebody that he is in power, we actually refer to his being empowered by a certain number of people to act in their name. The moment the group from which the power originated to begin with disappears, his power also vanishes." The truth is, men acting in consent have created structures which allows them to keep in power. The unfortunate part about this is that men in power act in the name of the women who willingly empower them. Women also have the ability to work in consent and form powerful groups that can assist us to fight for gender equality more effectively, if we can resist with our power. And this is where I speak to the statistics in this country, that majority of the people in this country are women. I come from an organization that majority of the people who are in those structures are women, but consistently, election of men is a priority. Consistently, in our organizations, in our institutions, in our companies, we sit in panels where we appoint men over women. We sit in bid adjudication committees as women, where we appoint men companies and overlook women companies, not because they can't do it. This is the power that we have in our hands that we have given up. Now, let's stand together as women as we reflect this year during this Women's Month to take back our power, to empower each other, to change, transform our society for the better, and most importantly, let us support each other to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I just have a very short story to tell you that I've worked as the head of department for 9 years, firstly in Gauteng and then nationally. And I've always thought that it's nice to work for a minister who does not know the space they're operating in, because sometimes funeka ubashaya abantu so uzakwazi umshaya as the DG or as the HOD. But this one is a problem, because She knows, she has worked in the bureaucracy. She knows how the bureaucracy behaves. She knows how it operates. But I've worked, in my previous job, I worked with 5 ministers in 5 years. And I can tell you now and say that I prefer a minister who knows their story. At least when we disagree about something that you know and that I know. So we are not disagreeing about something that you don't know as the minister, and I know it as your DG or your HOD. So when she says I am a no-nonsense person, yeah, no chani. Yo, go into the system and investigate, Betunana, you will see. And then you raise an issue about leadership and how women must support each other, and how when you are a woman and you are a leader, you get excluded in easy way, in simple ways. And I think sometimes men do not understand the things that they do to exclude you. They go to Chisanyama. I don't do Chisanyama because I don't like the culture. So I was in a portfolio where I think we were 3 DGs, 2 females and 1 man. And I always felt about the men is having so much advantage when you have male ministers, because they go to Chisanyama, they can go drinking together, they do all these things. But with female ministers, you never have an opportunity, because exactly as you are saying, when you are done with work, you are rushing home. You must take care of children, you must know the homework of children, you must know what people are going to eat at home. The minister is faced with the same, she's female, you are faced with the same as a female DG. Even if you are younger, because your kids are still younger, you have a young family. But the point in all it is that we need people who are sensitive. We need leaders who are sensitive to the fact that even if we talk about equality, that equality in the home front, women are still doing so much, even at work anyway. Women are still doing so much, so it's quite important. As you were speaking, I was going back to my life and so touched, because I've seen these things happen, and when you call them, it's like you are crazy. So, and I think sometimes I don't have a problem with people thinking I'm arrogant and I'm crazy. It's fine. If it addresses the matter at hand that we're dealing with, I'm going to continue until you get the message from me. So, having said that, where is my dearest poet, Miss Remufilwe Sishedi? I'm sure I've butchered the name. I apologize in advance. I've read it in Xhosa. That's our poet. Where is the poet? Thank you, Sisi. I'd like to hand over to you. You're looking so pretty.
Thank you.
Sorry, darling. All right, the minister is requesting to leave. She has other commitments. She did explain to the first table earlier on. So let's please allow her to leave. Thank you very much.
Sotlang di tsebe loretseng. Kana nna ga ke boke ke neneketsa puo. Ke moradi a bo ra setshedi ke moradi a tlhagana tsa marawana setlogolwana sa bo ramoe. Me batsadi rile bante ba re ngwana yo re mo tsaletswe, ngwana yo re mo filwe ke modimo ka nna re mo filwe setshedi. Madume ke a le dumedisa tleng ka mogeleng ka mogolokwane. Bati watinta bafazi watinti mpokoto. You strike a woman, you strike a rock. It was the 9th of August 1956. Basadi bana ba itlama ka ditjale ba itlhaganela kwa the Union Building. Ba ya go lwanela ditokelo tsa rona. About 20,000 women rose as one. No race, no age, no rage, no language barrier could segregate them, for the mandate was clear. Go ema jaaka sopa sengwe. They didn't just carry petitions, they carried courage. They carried dreams of generations unborn as bearers of generations and molders of communities. They rose as one. For when women rise, communities thrive. Mogolokwane. I am talking about women of grace and resilience. Women who come in peace. No shouting, no chaos, no violence. Women of grace, resilience, and a spirit that refuses to back down. They didn't have to speak in order to be heard. For their presence, peaceful presence, and uncompromising presence commanded attention that had to be followed through by action. I am talking about women of grace and resilience. See, on that day, the world learned that women are rocks, women are diamonds, rare and radiant. Amandla! Awe tu! Womandla! I am talking about women of grace and resilience. We are women. We are rocks. We are diamonds. We don't break under pressure. We are forged under pressure. We are women. Pula!
Thank you so much, Ntombi. Woo! Allah, Allah. Sure. Hey. Yeah, no, we are Kubakel. So, guys, now we're gonna have our panel. I hope my panel members are still alive and kicking. And I was told that if there's tea, I don't know, you'll get it. You'll just steal time and go and get it. If there is, and Gaiboni God, if you can, I'm not sure, but we started at 10, so maybe tea is no big deal. So I have a few panel members. Firstly, I have Dr. Peko, who's online, and she's been with us throughout the proceedings online. And I also have Dr. Charity Mkone. I also have Miss Nonkululo. Dr. Charity Mkone is a clinical psychologist. Dr. Peko was acknowledged earlier on as a National Planning Commissioner. We have Umis, and I'd like them to come to the front, those who are here. Please, Dr. Charity Mkone. We have Unonkululeko Mbalu, Program Manager Wakamuso. And we have Umis Rikopele Belebesi, Interior Design, Media and Art Specialist. Rikopele. I'm saying it in Xhosa. Rikupile. Sorry, Rikupile. Yeah, no. So these ladies are going to be speaking on topics that you have in the program. Commissioner Dr. Peko is going to be speaking about a more integrated care strategy in South Africa. Dr. Mkone will be speaking about access to mental health care as a human right. And Ms. Mbalu will be speaking about role of technology in facilitating positive change in communities. And Ms. Rikupile will be speaking about healing and justice through art, building collective resilience in communities. I have their resumes or their profiles, but I'm not going to be reading them because of time. And the organizers have already alerted me that we should try and keep to time as agreed, so I'm going to really do that. And the first speaker, so we've agreed with the three panelists who are here how we're going to handle the conversation. They will come here and speak for 5 minutes, and then we'll have a conversation to introduce the topic, and then we'll have a conversation, and we will invite you into that conversation so that it's not them just standing and speaking and you not having an opportunity to interact. Also, because Dr. Peko is online, we will let her speak for her 15 minutes, which she was given in the program. And then later on, when there's questions that are being asked, then she can take questions that are relevant to her, because she's online, she's not here with us currently. Without explaining further, I would like to welcome you, Dr. Peko, to please take the stage and be able to share with us, and also to remind you that it will be for 15 minutes that we require you to share. If you can do less, we'll be happy, but you were promised 15 minutes, you get your 15 minutes. Thank you very much. Over to you, Commissioner Dr. Peko. Thank you. Yes, there she is. Please go ahead, Doc. I don't know. Okay, please unmute, Doc. Dr. Peko, please unmute. She's not muted, though.
I also stand on the protocols. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Doc, we can. Thank you very much.
I'm on mute.
Go ahead.
On mute.
Go ahead, Doc, we can hear you.
No, I'm not on mute.
Guys, can you tell her to go ahead?
I can hear you.
Go ahead, Doc, we can hear you. Go ahead, Doc, we can hear you. Thank you.
There's a very bad time delay, so it's going to be very tricky, but I'm going to make a start. Thank you so much. So thank you everybody for being here. Thank you everybody for our energy, our commitment, and actually it is always wonderful to be in this women's universe, and I celebrate us, I ululate for us, and my only regret is the FOMO of not being in the room. I stand on the previous protocols in case you didn't hear me the first time. So if my 15 minutes of fame, I would like to go into this conversation and a few provocations and a few thoughts for us to share around what we mean and how we want to construct an economy that cares, as well as a care economy. The one is really to think about our GDP. So GDP, as we know, is what is used to measure production. It is what is used to measure development in most societies. But unfortunately, it ignores a few basic things. It ignores the infrastructure of life. Who is feeding us? Who is healing us? Who is educating us? And what are the things that sustain us? And I think one of the things that is very narrow, and I've spent many years of my professional life talking about, is that when we think about poverty, we can't only think about poverty in the context of rands and cents. Important, but material poverty is almost as important as spiritual poverty, as social poverty. It is, poverty that speaks to, for example, not knowing whether or not you're going to see anybody for the day, the poverty of loneliness, the poverty of lacking community, for example, which is why gatherings like this are so incredibly important. So when we think around sustainability and sustaining our development, we also need to think around this social ecology of relationships, and that is a very African thing, the relationality of development, the relationality of growth, and the relationality of care. Secondly, think around the global care economy, such as it is. It's worth at least 9 to 11% of this GDP, such as this GDP is. Now remember that the GDP doesn't count things like climate change, it doesn't count things like commuting, it doesn't count things like the stress of getting to and from work, it counts things like war, it counts things like weapons. And people sometimes get surprised when we see a GDP growing or an economy growing, even in the time of war. People might be surprised that Russia's economy is still quite buoyant, or Israel's economy is still quite buoyant, because weapons manufacture counts as part of the GDP. So we need to really rethink what this means in the context of an economy that cares. Also then, when we think around South Africa, the unpaid care economy is valued at about 500 billion rands a year, which is about 10 to 12% of our goes to domestic produce, according to Stats SA Time News surveys. That is a huge amount, and it can't be just reduced to the things that we always talk about. So my next portion, I want to talk about social reproduction beyond housework. Every time we talk about, the care economy, which is why I'm careful to use the term social reproduction, and I will explain why. I want us to remind us that it's not it's not just about, and those are important things, but it's not just about that. It is about the things that sustain people, that sustain cultures, and that sustain ecosystems. This is what reproduction, social reproduction is. So in South Africa, men on average spend 3 to 5 times more hours on unpaid care than men in social reproduction. Globally, women do 76% of unpaid care work, according to ILO, which is equivalent to about US dollars 10.8 trillion annually, or 13% of global GDP. This is a huge amount. This cannot just be reduced to caring and sharing, huggy, fuzzy stuff. This is actually what I would like to call an intergenerational dividend. Not only caring for children, not only caring for the environment, but it is teaching. It is seed saving. It is healing practices that secure survival and knowledge transmission far beyond our single households and far beyond generations. Think about the person Aurutileng Sesotho, kapo Xhosa, kapo Venda. I heard the representative, Dr. Hazel, talking in Spanish and in French. Who taught you French and Spanish in the first place? Who teaches us the Swahili? And if those things are not taught to us, they die. They literally die. Who teaches us Sito? Who teaches us our Ditoto Kisetorona, our clan names, our praise songs? Who teaches us who we are? Those are transmitted from generation to generation, primarily by women. And that cannot be just said to be just care work. That is a huge intergenerational legacy. Thirdly, I'd also want us to talk around a bit around intersectionality and power, and how the care burden and the social reproduction in South Africa, but in common with many parts of the world, is racialized, it is stratified across class, and it is deeply feminized as well. Now, domestic workers in South Africa, almost all of whom are African women, are amongst the lowest paid and often earn below minimum wage. And I want to just levitate and hover around this, because we also need to think around how it is that oftentimes we then turn domestic work into something that is intoyalelapa, family work. So you'll call your cousin Adutinko Mangolaning or Adutinko Kobimvaba and say, they're not doing much since matric or whatever. They've never gotten on their feet. Rahari Godi Laling. Do we really think about this as work, or is Rahadi or cousin Mang Mang there as free labor? And these are really questions we need to ask and introspect amongst ourselves, especially as people who have a layer of class privilege. Also to think around the notion of the fact that many times domestic work or care work doesn't only happen in the household. And I'd like us to really think around the way that this care complex is reproduced in the professions that many people have. So think about teaching, think about nursing, think about social work, the big three. Again, how is it that how is it that as positions become more prestigious, become higher paid, have more power, have more influence, they begin to change and become gendered even more. So the difference between a teacher in primary school who is teaching maths and science, the grade 1 teacher, versus by the time you get to high school, principal almost always is mutu wantate. What happened there? What happened to that woman who was teaching us in grade 1? Why did she not necessarily and automatically transition to become the principal? Worse, when we get to the higher echelons of academia as well. People like my good friend and sister, Vice-Chancellor Professor LenkaBula, they are unicorns in the education system. They are unicorns. Why are we not seeing more of this? The difference between, for example, at a PA, by the time that this becomes a chief of staff, normally now the chief of staff, it's a guy, it's a man, doing the same thing, managing diaries, managing meetings, managing calls, managing appointments, but we've changed the nomenclature, we've given it more prestige, and we've increased the salary, and suddenly the women disappear. They disappear. A seamstress versus a designer. A cook, the people who cook or who do catering, versus most of the chefs in the world who suddenly become men. So we also have to think around how the feminization of care work is also linked to, firstly, the public and the private, and the way that society apportions greater prestige as these professions, as women disappear from these professions. It's community health workers as well, who form the backbone of HIV, TB, who form the backbone of the fight during the COVID-19 pandemic, yet remain precariously employed. And I think for those of us who remember the first wave of the HIV/AIDS pandemic, the first major pandemic in this country and globally, in fact, remember that was a time when there was this care in the community where people were told that, well, the society will take care of the sick. Who is the society? No gloves. At a time where water is scarce in many communities as well, and where it was clear that the state, as oftentimes happens, expected women to subsidize and to outsource their responsibilities to women, unpaid, unrecognized, and often unprotected. And this is also to do with austerity politics, which I'll talk about later. And then also to talk around, when we think around intersectionality and power, the role of migrant women, particularly from Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Malawi, who sustain urban households yet lack urban protection. We can add this to the people who migrate from rural to urban areas, seeking to do care work and to be part of the social reproductive complex for other households, whilst leaving their own children in the care of often their mothers, their grandmothers, or their siblings, etc. And globally, migrant domestic workers send $150 billion US in remittances, which subsidize both the sending and the receiving and receiving economies. This deserves much respect and new languaging. Also, to add on the context of in the context of feminist economics, which is one of my key areas when I'm not being a national planning commissioner, feminist economics, which defines work to include both human and ecological reproduction. And this for me is more descriptive than gender, because gender is a state of biology, whereas feminist economics speaks to structures, speaks to systems, and speaks to dismantling and naming power and oppression. So globally, if governments invested in care, the ILO estimates that 269 million new jobs could be created by 2030, more than in technology, more than in extractives, more than in infrastructure development. Why is our government not focusing far more on this? In South Africa, redirecting just 1% of GDP to care sectors could create over 300,000 jobs, while reducing the burden of the unpaid work that is often forced on women. This is not women's work, I often say, friends and sisters. It is a system of power relations that undervalues both labor and nature. I also want to talk briefly about the care complex, paid and unpaid. Now, to rethink this, if we think around the care complex, it spans households, it spans markets, it spans whole communities, it spans ecosystems. And in South Africa, the early childhood development remains underfunded, with over 40% of children aged under 5 not enrolled in any form of early learning. And I want to add that we have, in some respects, there's now become, with the talking about the professionalization of early childhood development, I don't want us to lose sight of Boragadi Bale, Bonkgono Bale, those trusted women who raised us, who our parents, who trusted to leave from 8 in the morning to 5 p.m. Myself and my siblings, we are also the products of those Nkgonus, those Rakhadis, those Mangwanis down the street. Now, whether that was early childhood development or whether it was just a safe place to leave your children, they'd be running around climbing trees to their own devices. But I think that it's really important when in these conversations about supposedly professionalizing early childhood development, let's not forget Boragadi, Bonkgono, and those trusted women who have been pillars in our communities. Domestic workers also represent about 10% of employed women, yet we are still excluded from multiple protections. And I think to speak about the ecological aspects of care, and this is where I think it is insufficient to think about care work as caring only for households or only caring within households. Ecological care is a huge component of what the care complex should be counting and should be including. And this means that, for example, smallholder women farmers in this country and across most of the continent, across the majority world, provide about 60 to 80% of food. And yet in South Africa, women hold less than 50% of agricultural land rights. Land is care, friends, sisters. Land is caring for the land, caring for the seeds, caring for the knowledge that these seeds and this land contain is very much a huge part of this intergenerational legacy that I was talking about as well. And lastly, just to say that the whole notion of why GDP is failing us, we need to shift then from the notion of thinking around climate justice and thinking around it in the context of also being part of care justice, sustainability for land, food, and future for future generations. And to think, and if we think around an integrated care strategy, firstly, recognize care as social infrastructure, as vital, as important. Redistribute care between genders, classes, and institutions. We need to, I suggest that we can't keep calling this women's work and feeding into those gendered, what I call gender hostile social norms. We need to also invest in care sectors, in social reproduction that creates not only work and reduces inequality, but that rethinks the notion of what a community actually is. And lastly, to rethink gender responsive and care responsive budgeting to measure well-being and not just the GDP. So reproduction is not just a burden, it's a foundation of all economies, all futures. And the question for South Africa is not, can we afford to invest in care, but can we afford not to? If we center care for each other, for land, for future generations, we create not just for survival, but we create the possibility for freedom and for thriving.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. And I think you highlighted a number of things. This thing of moving from cook to chef, seamstress to designer, you've opened my eyes. Thank you very much. I'm going to really move on and invite Dr. Charity Mkone to take her 5 minutes of fame on the role of technology in facilitating positive change in communities. I promised you a conversation and we're going to have it, so don't worry. I don't know if we have microphones. Colleagues, if we have microphones so that they don't even have to stand up, but you are already here, so over to you, Doc.
Good afternoon, everyone. I was very stoked and really inspired by what the Commissioner said, and I will be speaking on mental health. And where I'd like to start is for each of us to think about being born into this world, right? When you're born into this world, you come out of a womb, which is warm. The temperature is always regulated. It's just what you need. You never have to fend for food. You're never too hungry. You're never too full. The conditions are just perfect. There's nothing that you need to hustle for, right? And then you get born into this world. You come out, and usually into a very bright world. The temperature is either too hot or too cold. There are things that you start to feel in your stomach that you didn't feel inside a womb. And there's no wonder, it's little wonder why children come out and they cry. And I think that in framing mental health, often what we speak about, and when we think about the stigmas around mental health, it's because it's framed against mental illness. And so if we look at our condition as being human beings and where we start from and where we are, is that there is something that is inherent in being a human being and something that's inherent in the human condition. And that thing is trauma. And so I often speak about trauma with a capital T and traumas with a small t. Okay. So traumas with a small t are things that we go on and we experience and face because of the human condition, because we are humans, we are made of flesh, we find ourselves in a body that is subject to all sorts of things. We find ourselves with a mind that is also subject to a whole lot of things. And so when we begin to think about ourselves as human beings and how we model who we are and what we think about what it means to be mentally well, because we speak about it in terms of mental illness and mental health. But I'd like to change the framing and challenge us to think about it as emotional wellness versus being emotionally unwell. And oftentimes when we think about that, I'll go back to my notes so that I take up not more than my 5 minutes. It is about then going into the traumas with a capital T. That already when we come into this world, there's a lot that we're burdened with. And I think as Prof. LenkaBula was speaking about that, women have been pathfinders, women have done a lot. But with that has come a lot of burden, emotional, physical, and I mean, if we have to just look at the state of the world, the state of South Africa, the statistics, I will not even go into that. We cannot understate the amount and level of trauma that we go through. So the first question that I'd like to leave us with and have us think about when it comes to mental health and how we steward it, how we think about it, and how we essentially stop ourselves from stigmatizing and having a category of the us and them, that mentally ill person or this one with mental health, is to think about how can emotional awareness and insight become tools for social transformation. Because when a woman begins to notice what she's feeling, what she's experiencing, and gives language to it, gives language to her inner life, she's not just healing herself, but she's interrupting patterns of silence, patterns of carrying pain and everything alone, and that often does ripple to next generations. And secondly, when we bring it back to the South African context, how do we see the balance between women's strength and their vulnerability? So the thing with women's strength and being imbogodo and a rock is because sometimes the circumstances and life does not allow for vulnerability. There are a lot of things that happen in circumstances and things that are just on you and over you where it doesn't feel like being vulnerable or even softness in any kind of way is an option or it's something that's available to us. And so it is to begin to think about strength and how do we operationalize and how do we think and talk about strength of women? Is it about denying the pain that we feel? Is it about denying the realities of some of the injustices and really the traumas that we go through? And part of mental health or healing is about acknowledging. And what does it mean to acknowledge some of the traumas and the pains that we face as women? And how does that aid in terms of mental and emotional wellness and the ability to bring about social transformation? And finally, what does it mean for psychological care to be a form of social justice? So for me, good mental health is not, or mental health care, it's not a luxury that certain people get to have, and it's not a response to having labels such as depression and anxiety that only at that point do you think about the concept of mental wellness or mental care or mental health, but it's rather to think about it as emotional well-being, because that removes the stigma, because all of us have emotions, whether we acknowledge them, whether we feel them or not, but bringing them up to the fore is how we then take care of our mental health. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. And let me just tell you that you spent 4 minutes of your time. Thank you very much for that. The next speaker will be speaking on the role of technology in facilitating positive change in communities. Ms. Nonkululeko Mbalu, who is the program manager for Wakamuso. Over to you, Mpumlwana. Over to you, Nonkululeko.
Good morning, well, good afternoon to everybody in the room. Greeting all the mothers, the women in the room. Very, very honored to have been invited, Sis Fatisa, by Sawid. My name is Nonkululeko Mbalu. It is always lovely to be in a room full of South Africans because nobody calls me Mbalu, because my 11 character name feels so long that they figure the short one must be the one that is her name. So thank you very much, notwithstanding having been renamed by Usis Yoli. Thank you so much for the invitation. I just want to ask everybody in the room, who's sitting here, or how many of us sitting here have this? Right? All of us in this room. All of us in this room have this device. What have we been using this device to do today? Texting our parents, shouting at the children who've left their blazers at home. I personally am quite looking forward to going back onto the dustbin that is, I still call it Twitter, and finding the 4x4 lady. There is a young lady who is a writer, and she, over the past few days, spoke to everybody about, or she posted about how she just bought a 4x4, top of the range and all of that. And the kids say that there are several crash outs that are happening. There are applications that she's receiving for partnership, and she has told all of those applicants that she's in such a good place that she doesn't want to be in a romantic relationship, but also agafuni nge-4x4 yakhe, right? So this is what these devices are allowing us to do. But beyond all of these little things, these spaces that they're giving us access to, technology, these phones, are lifelines. This is how communities are communicating with each other about an event that's happening. So-and-so uqekezelwe. Please be careful walking in that section of our community. This is what's happening. Did you hear about so-and-so's daughter? An unfortunate thing happened. Did you hear about the children? An unfortunate thing happened. Keep your children safe. These are lifelines. This is how we are pressing panic buttons when we are in the midst of a fear of hijack and a fear of harm. So these devices aren't just devices. It's lovely that we can phone and video call and all of these other things, but they're also lifelines. What they have allowed for us, though, on this continent, what was once darkest Africa, where narratives continue to persist about who we are and what we're capable of, and our smarts and our brilliance and the extent to which those exist or not. What they've allowed this continent to do, the innovators of this continent to do, is to leapfrog. This continent has moved. I have an 18-year-old son. He does not know what a landline is. He sees it in movies, but he's never had the joy of going to a Telkom tiki box and not having money and hacking it so you can phone home because you don't have money and it's at the end of a 7 o'clock lecture, right? It's allowed us to leapfrog. We've skipped landlines for mobiles. We've skipped traditional banking for mobile money. And there's a very interesting statistic about that. So somebody, somewhere, one day decided, I need to send money to someone I care for who doesn't have a bank account. There has to be a way to get them money that they need for bread, for school fees, for uniform, for whatever it might be, without having them have to move from some rural area or a far-flung area that is not serviced by the taxi drivers who are fighting Uber drivers, that is not serviced by those people. They have to be able to get that money. And so they figured, why not send that money to a cell phone number? Because even in a rural area, my granny might not have WhatsApp, which they do nowadays, but even with utilili, does everybody know in this room what a tilili is? For the benefit of Dr. Gooding, utilili, so these phones, you can now play any song, any ringtone. But there are these small kind of, let's call them analog phones that you can throw at people, and how it rings is it goes dilili, dilili. And so in this country, even if all my grandmother has is utilili, she can still receive money because behind that dilili is a cell phone number. And the statistics for the amount of money that moves in the mobile money environment is $1.26 trillion in Africa alone. That is how much money is moving between cell phones. Now, we've said that everybody in this room has a cell phone, but in this country, it's 70% of the people who have a mobile phone, a mobile device. That is a 70% potential penetration for technological solutions. So I'll give you an example, a live example of what technology has allowed the organization that I work for, which is Wakamoso, meaning the one from tomorrow, what it has allowed us to do. So we worked in partnership with an investment holdings company called Ubu, and there was a community in the Eastern Cape, in Bazia, and the farmers there, the small-scale farmers, were saying, we need an abattoir. We've got supply. We need to have an abattoir built. And so we went in using surveys on WhatsApp. Everything was WhatsApp-based, right? And we went in, and people started doing inventory, counting stock. How much cattle do people really have? And at the end of that exercise, the data said that you actually don't have enough cattle to be wanting an abattoir. What you need is a sheep shearing factory. You have a lot more sheep than you have cattle. And so technology and data enabled the redirection of resources to where they should have been. So can you imagine if there had been no technology that allowed that research work to be done and that data to be gathered? Had that not been there, there'd have been an abattoir that was built that is not functioning as it should, which would eventually come into disrepair because it was not serving the need of that community. So this is the important work that technology is allowing to be delivered. But broadening it beyond South Africa, right? Kenya's M-Pesa is now part of the fabric of African financial inclusion. Mukuru in Zimbabwe, helping people transmit money across the continent and even across the world. Rwanda has zipline drones, where drones essentially are delivering medication, cutting the cost and the time it takes to deliver medication. In Nigeria, there's an application called Farm Crowdy that connects investors with smallholder farmers, which is something that was not done before. What does this mean for us as a continent? It's very simple. Technology has become a real catalyst for African innovators to ideate solutions that are specific to our context, that take into account the lives we live, our cultural backgrounds, what is normal and accepted, what would work on this continent that wouldn't work somewhere else. And it is creating solutions that are fit for purpose for this continent. We're constantly pushing the envelope for financial inclusion, for access to essential services, for community voice and accountability, and most importantly, for considering how to return value to the contributors in this economy. And so that is what I would like to leave you with in the famous words of everybody's favorite faith leader, Andizubamte. That is what I would like to leave you with, to think about the many ways in which technology has allowed us to leapfrog and really put Africa and the brilliance of Africa's youth, Africa's women, at the center of where the world should be focused, because we all know, and we've heard it said, that the future of the world is here. And so it would make sense that if we're starting to think about human-centered, empathetic, ethical technological solutions, that this is the place where we look. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nonkululeko, so much. And I will call upon the last speaker now, who is going to be speaking on healing and justice through art, building collective resilience in communities. Ms. Rekupile Belebesi, over to you.
Good afternoon, ladies. Good afternoon to the dignitaries, and I just want to be very thankful to Dr. Zizakele Matlab. I have another name for her, so this is a formal name. I want to thank her for, recommending me for this. I don't take it lightly. It's imperative that women mention each other in rooms that matter. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to just ask that before I commence, we do this. I know you're tired and you're probably hungry. It's almost 1. No, they don't. I want to see the smiles, right? Yes, that was just to get blood flowing, The privilege of being the last speaker. Oh no, I forgot to ask Lusanda, but I'll speak about her. These are great women, Sawid, wow. But I just want to say, the privilege of being the last speaker is that people are too tired, too hungry, so they won't listen. You're just going to talk and they'll be like, yes, but they're like, we're done, we've been receiving information, right? So I'm hoping I get away with a lot. My name is Rekupile Belebesi. I'm a Sotho girl. The name has been butchered a lot from the program itself. The spelling, oh my goodness, last night I said, Lord, I forgive them. I said, Lord, it's okay. It's all right. We can forgive each other. It happens, it's just, but I'm so honored to be here because when I spoke to Lusanda and they were inviting me for this great occasion, I asked her, what's the deal? What's this about? Because usually with women's events, it's let's wear pink and let's wear yellow. And then we tell each other, you look beautiful, you look beautiful. So I told her I don't do those ones. I don't. I'd rather sit at home and read a book. You know why? Because those are obvious things. No one should tell you to tell someone she's beautiful. It should be who you are, a fountain of good. So we can't, gather here, drive to Pretoria for us to tell each other you're beautiful. You have to cultivate goodness in your own time, right? Then she said to me, no, my darling, Sawid is much more serious than that. I said, what are you talking about? She said to me, no, we are about progressive women. You're going to be speaking to thinkers, smart women, innovators, doers. I said, oh, okay, I'm there. And she said to me, no, these are women that would listen to you, but also talk and rather collaborate. And even after, there's going to be implementations furthermore. If we would listen to the minister very carefully, she even came up with a suggestion for an initiative that can come out of this. That's the point of conversation. That's the point of engagement. Otherwise, it's just another Women's Day thing ticked in Unisa's, we did it this year, next year. What's the point? What's the point? So I work in the media space. I'm an interior designer. And when I looked at what they had given me, when I'd been given to talk about healing and justice through art, building collective resilience in communities, I said we can talk about healing and justice through art. And I know that because it's a women's event, the word equality will come up. And for me, when you talk equality, you talk equity. If we're not making money, what's the point? Because we're going to talk about how men are better than us, how men have been, systematically positioned to be better than us. We've been hearing that over and over today. Well, if you had money, you would have authority. And when I went into prayer for this event, the Lord said to me, tell them that in the Bible it said money is a defense. It's time that South African women think ownership. You could be an incredible singer, but if you don't own the rights and your own property in that music space, you're just going to be used as a craft, and the people that own you are going to benefit more. We have to think and start to rethink how we show up. Because if you think I'm an incredible artist, understand the economics of art. There's a gallery, there's a PR team, there's systems in place. How do you just create art and give away, relinquish your work to ever read without understanding what it's worth? Are there royalties tied to this thing? So that if you were to pass away today, what are the legalities and dividends that are owed to your people? We have to start thinking generationally. We have to start thinking legacy. And in South Africa, we've been seeing, it's perpetuated that our artists, our actors, people we respect, over and over when they pass away, we see that there's a Capitec card on TikTok that we have been asked to put money into. Not only is this disrespectful to those people's legacies, but it's embarrassing and humiliating to their families. Now, you think, of course, it's their fault. Why didn't they save their money? But that's because you don't know how money works in the arts. When you're acting, we see the story, the big play or the story, and the person is there for 3 months shooting. You know, they're shooting in the Eastern Cape, they're shooting a gorgeous story, fantastic, we see it on Showmax or we see it on SABC or whatever the case may be. You're thinking, this actress or this actor, gentleman, is so huge, 2.3 million followers on Instagram, that translates to money. It's not always like that. Fame and money are often incredibly different. Those in the media can tell you. And so what we then going to now have to think about is the fact that if an actor's, shooting for 3 months, sometimes they're only getting about 70,000 rand. You think about bills in Johannesburg. You think about actual bills like their parents, they're somebody's mom, they're someone's dad. I've got friends of mine who are medical doctors, and they told me, at medical school at 4th year, we have institutions like RMB, Standard Bank, ABSA coming to medical school to teach them about finance. Where are those institutions at AFDA? Where are those where are those financial institutions in TUT? Why are they not talking to artists and creators about money and finance? So that they begin to help them engineer thinking about preserving their work, protecting their work, and how to commodify what it is they do, and packaging. And again, when we talk about South Africans, we are incredibly conservative people. We are so conservative to our detriment. If you look at West African women, you look at the writers in West Africa, just go on Netflix and look at any producer, executive producers from Nigeria, their names are gonna pull up. They're very serious about the business of what they do. So we get excited about being seen, but if you don't have the money in the bank, you don't have power. You don't have authority, so we'll see you shining, but then we don't know you're struggling financially. And if you're struggling financially, again, the Bible. I loved when the VC earlier made reference to the Bible, because I was concerned. I was like, I don't know how sensitive Unisa women are as it pertains to religion. But for me, Christianity is not religion, it's a way of life. And the Bible says, the Bible says that wisdom is good, and with inheritance, and by the Spirit, and by it there is profit to them that see the sun. For wisdom is a defense, and money is a defense. This is in Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 11 to 12. But the excellency of knowledge is that wisdom giveth life to them that have it. Another scripture, Luke 12:48. From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded. We are one of the best, in fact, we are like the best country in Africa in terms of infrastructure, but we are so conservative. How is it possible that our actors are the ones who are dying without anything to their name? It's embarrassing. If you look at people like she's her Nyembe, I just forgot her name, I think it's Nandi Nyembe. She did Ukwala Kwanyanini, I don't know if I'm saying it right? Kwanyanini. And then there's Untate Vusi Tanda, who did Emzinez and Zizwa. Then when they passed away or when they were sick, we had to put money. You ask yourself, what is it about the structure of the media houses and television that is causing these people to be put in such compromised places? And then again, if we start to see women in positions that matter, women need to literally think, we need to strategize. I want to be an actress, that's fine, but I must be a casting director, I must be a casting agent. I want to have rights to this production because it was my idea. Intellectual property is everything. You need to know, if I have a book idea, how do I make sure that that book is not copied? What do I do to patent and protect that book? Don't go around sharing your ideas carelessly. You need to be conscious of what it is you carry. And if you value it, then you will know what, and you will investigate what channels to navigate so that it becomes valuable to you and us. To you, it's money. To us, it's going to be information, it's inspiration, and so forth, right? So again, I cannot help it. You need to think about yourselves beyond South Africa. Think about yourselves. You are in a very massive, continent. Women are doing incredible things. I cannot overly emphasize the power of West African women. They are so audacious. They're not apologetic. They want to own everything. So the point of being humble, if you're humble and broke, what's the plan? What's the plan? South African women, you are smart. We have the best institutions for education. There is absolutely no reason for us to not have money. There's no excuse, right? Okay, let me see what else I left. I'm very passionate about money because it's because I've done the business side of interior design, and it's beautiful to do people's homes and luxury, and to help people live and inhabit space beautifully. But these are people that have disposable income. And I look at other artists. You see someone like Nelson Mankamo. Nelson Mankamo's artwork now, you can buy a piece maybe for about 150,000 to 200,000. Ask yourself, when Nelson Mankamo started doing art, where did he live? Do you think South African structures and policymakers around the arts and creative sector think about that? Where does the artist live? Do you know that an artist can't get a house on a bond? Because they consider that artist a red flag, a risk, that this person doesn't have an actual proper job, so they won't be able to sustain and pay a bond of 8,000 Rand in Cosmo, wherever. Yet a girl that works in retail gets the bond. So do you see how we think about artists and creativity? We undermine the very thing that we consume every day. You get in your car, you play a song. You go to an exhibition, you've got art pieces. Art in our country has always played a pivotal role. The Miriam Makebas, it's always been at the cornerstone of our transformation. And yet we do not value it. Artists are struggling. We perpetuated this idea and romanticize, oh yeah, artists are struggling. No, not everywhere. Artists in America are living well in their own properties. Artists in America are traveling. Artists in America dictate that I come with an entourage of 6 people. And this is how I like my water and the room temperature to be. And we fly private class for us to come and talk to you about whatever it is. People can dictate the terms of their conditions when they have How are you going to do that when you have no money? So I'm being told that I've spoken enough. I actually forgot. Let me sit down. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think this is on. Can you hear me? I feel it's on. All right. So the concept of being humble and broke. Yeah, I know. So the idea is you really can't be broke and humble. You have to make money. Find a way to make money. Wow. So we'll just have can I just ask that we respect our panelists, please? I'm going to beg the people in the kitchen first to keep it low as they are planning to feed us. And then I'm going to ask the ladies and the women and the mothers who are here to just bear with us a little bit. There's just too many noises coming to the stage. Thank you very much. I'm going to start by asking Dr. Mkone, Dr. Charity. So you talk about this unresolved trauma which undermines the inherent strength of women. And I think I was doing something the other day and I was asking a question, what's happening in our society? And what the answer I achieved, the answer I came with is that we are a traumatized society. Colonialism, apartheid, social inequalities, there's just too many things. And to add on it, we are broke. and we are taught to be humble. We've grown up in households where being humble was a key performance indicator at home. You have to show that you are humble. I mean, even now when I'm home, I must remember, hey, I must be humble. I'm home. These people have invested so much on me to be humble. So, humble and broke, it's part of our problems currently that are traumatizing us. So, how do we address this trauma? And how can we empower ourselves in both personal and collective space in addressing this trauma?
So, I mean, addressing trauma, I was taught in school to say, go to psychotherapy, see a psychologist, which is the short and easy answer.
We were broke, we can't afford them.
Absolutely. So what then becomes very important, and this is what we often gloss over or don't really dwell into, is just acknowledging that. Because I think if you look at particularly the South African context, on a global, more social scale, there's something about wanting to get over things as soon as possible. And I don't blame the South African nation or the history of our country, but it's a human condition that as human beings, we want things that will maximize our pleasure and minimize pain at all costs. No one wants to feel any sort of pain. We want to get rid of it. And that's the thing with trauma. It is a sense of having to go back to the wound, and that's the very unpopular message that people don't want to hear, about going back to the wound and being able to face and address that. And I think that often we don't focus on individuals and smaller sects of society where it's not a mass sort of intervention where people must heal on a mass platform, but individual people who are in influential spaces, because that ripples onto other things. Because of the mass scale, when you're looking at society and South African nation, of the mass scale of the traumas that we've gone through, it is also important to acknowledge that and always keep that front of mind, but also not to keep the healing or the burden of having to do this healing on someone else out there, but to look at ourselves, our own circumstances, our own families, our own sort of generational things that have been passed on, and begin to heal from our internal worlds first and see that ripple on. So my thinking and my advice is that it starts with us. It starts with you as a person, and then the ripple effects are felt by the people that you work with, your parents, your children, and all the people. When you take the responsibility for yourself to firstly acknowledge, and then after acknowledging, to find ways to heal, which are not only psychotherapy or speaking or seeing a psychologist, but also, I think the Commissioner spoke about being relational. And something that we've lost, and another speaker spoke about community, that it's something that is big and something that is important, that we do not stay in our little silos, because that is what causes this unwellness, this emotional unwellness to grow in silence and in secrecy.
Wow, you've said a lot there. Silence and secrecy is also a way I think many of us has grown within, that we don't talk about these things. You know, these are things that abantwana must not know anything about, and you grow that with, and it becomes very difficult, I think, in later stages to just unbundle all these particular things. Now, moving to Nkululeko. So data is invisible. So all these things that you're talking about are invisible except the cell phone, which is the gadget, or the gadget, where even if it's not the cell phone. And there are invisible costs. I'm just interested to hear, what are these invisible costs to the continent, and what is the impact practically to us in the continent?
Thank you. Okay, I am audible. Just so to touch on the invisibility crisis, there's a massive, massive crisis of swathes of communities, millions of people who are left outside of mainstream data sets, right? There is a gentleman on social media who constantly speaks about how these banks give higher interest rates to black borrowers than they do to white borrowers. Or the fact that in businesses, there's an interesting statistic around the invisibility crisis. While doing a bit of work, we found out that 90% of the informal sector doesn't exist anywhere in the data. And their invisibility means that there's a 25 to 40% underestimation of GDP in some African countries, right? So what this invisibility crisis is a constant state where the people who are outside of mainstream data sets are always on the back foot. They don't have access to credit. They don't have access to the kinds of support that they need. For instance, smallholder farmers, 80% of them are unaccounted for in data. And in rands and cents, or in ones and zeros, that's $100 billion credit cost, right? It's a credit gap for smallholder farmers who nobody wants to be a smallholder farmer for the rest of their lives. Some do, but others don't. And so what do you do with the ones who don't want to be there? And how do you support the entire industry, right? There's something called the Africa Risk Premium in foreign direct investment. So global investors will look at African businesses and they'll go, you're from where? There's a risk premium for us being involved or investing in that space. The cost of that, anywhere between $50 and $100 billion. That's investment that we don't get because there are data sets that don't speak about the completeness of who we are as African people in all of our different permutations. So when we speak about the invisibility crisis, it goes hand in hand with an opportunity cost, right? So the things and the people you don't see, there's a cost to not seeing those people. There's a cost to, you don't factor them into the budgets that you're sending. As an example, Wakamoso is embarking on a relationship with Sawid. And there's a major challenge of unemployed social workers. Now, the number that you see, or the number that's been bandied about, is 9,000, because the view is there are 9,000 social worker vacancies in the country, which then means that there are 9,000 social workers who are without work. But we don't have, if you don't have a database of who all the social workers are and who among them have jobs, you don't actually have a true account of what that gap looks like. And in the absence of a true account of the gap, it means when it comes to budget allocation, nobody's thinking about the fact that this is a gap that exists. They'll look at the 9,000 and go, okay, let's get enough budget for 9,000. But if you're sitting with 100,000 social workers without jobs, where's the budget going to come from for the other 91,000? So the conversation around the invisibility crisis has to be partnered with a conversation about the cost of that invisibility and the opportunities that are lost.
Thank you so much. LenkaBula, how does healing and justice look like for artists?
Thank you so much, Sosioli. I think, as I alluded, earlier, that I know it seems as if it's too emphasized, but finance is at the cornerstone of people doing their work and doing it well. When you have anxiety, a lot of artists have anxiety. That's why you'd find a lot of artists, when you think artists, you think it's synonymous with drugs, it's synonymous with alcohol. Why are they numbing themselves? It's because they're anxious about real things like every other person. They're anxious about where they're going to stay. Will they be able to pay rent for the next year? Will they be able to sustainably do this art? Or are they going to also vanish? You know what I mean? So mental health becomes a consequence when financial structures and policymakers and decision makers don't think about the artist as a full human being. When we're just consuming them as entities and we don't think about the humanity of them. So when you're asking about what does healing look like? For me, it's ideological shifts. The artist needs to start seeing themselves as a business. Then those who are consuming us needs to start seeing us as a business, paying us adequately and not throwing, peanuts to us. Then, of course, we need to look at I really would love to have a meeting with Dr. Gayton Mackenzie, because I want to look at what are his, policies around creating structures that create holistic living for artists. It's one thing to give an artist 30,000 rand in some competition. What are they going to do with that in the next 5 years? You're not actually, you're taking off an ANC mandate that money was dispersed in this year within this budget. But we don't think about the longevity, the legacy. and the well-being of that artist. So for me, it's about that, and also education. Education goes beyond, you are a fine artist, this is a canvas draw. But education looks like, what does your work going to Europe look like? What does you infiltrating borders beyond yourself in this jurisdiction look like? That's imperative. And South Africans need to honestly expand their thinking, launch themselves. The world is way bigger than our country. And we are part of it, you know, so yeah.
So we have Dr. Peko on the line. Thank you so much, Nkupile. We have Dr. Peko on the line, but I want to take questions from you. And remember that we also have her on the line if you have a question directly for her, and then we'll come back to our panel. I'm going to ask you guys straight to the point, otherwise I'm going to be fired. You know, I need to finish here. I don't start things and not finish them. There's a hand here that's very determined. Okay. The mics are here, so you'll have to organize that part. Oh, should I give you this one? Thank you. Okay, so there's two hands that side. I've noted one. There was one there. There was two here. There's another very decisive hand this side. So I have three hands. I'm going to ask you guys straight to the point. They are listening. They're going to answer.
Positive and creation energies to you all. I am Nicolene Trom from Umtung Abantu Foundations. Firstly, I would like to thank Sawid for these dialogues. They are very helpful. My issue centers around education. The problem is that on the ground, the reality is we've got a high rate of school dropout from high school. So for us to reach to that age, we have to nip it in the bud, because the problem is children are not motivated, they are not inspired, they are not encouraged. And the reason is that we need to look at the dynamics of a community. Right now, we are sitting with a parent that is hiding her 15-year-old from being raped by illegal miners. The community that I serve in is a mining community. So children as early as 12 years are turned into prostitution due to they come from poverty-stricken homes. So they are lured by these miners to be sex workers. So the issue is that as long as we are not facing these problems from the root cause, we will not reach the point where I heard when you, sorry, I forgot your name, Dr. Charity, when you spoke when we are born into this world, but sometimes it is lost in our growing up from as early as when we are pre-teens. So my point is that you grow up with that trauma because now the parent is scared. The parent needs to leave their workplace in order to protect their children. And right now, as we know, that even our police are unable to do anything for the citizens, because as long as you can't do anything.
That was a comment, so colleagues, you'll have to say something about it. There was another hand here. Yes, over to you.
Afternoon, ladies. Such an honor to be in the room of such well-versed women. I've learned so much just being in this room alone and being a part of this dialogue. So my question is directed to Rukubile. So I wrote it down just so I can be very quick. So we are currently in what we call the gig economy, where we're living contract to contract. And I really love the fact that you spoke about ownership and financial education, especially amongst Black communities. That's never a conversation that we're having. And my question is, in terms of the future of gig economy, what systems and structures do you think we should consider implementing to deal effectively with this economic crisis faced by artists? Because we can draw from Hollywood, but our economic landscape isn't the same. So as average South African artists or creatives, where can one start? And how do you think we can best leverage the seemingly inevitable gig economy that we're facing? Especially if we're not trying to be at the mercy of institutions or advocated people who are in leadership positions. How can we ourselves make shifts towards that? I know you mentioned that we need to see ourselves first as businesses, but for somebody who doesn't have that understanding, where can we start? Because I tried that out by moving from actress to being screenwriter to potentially becoming producer, but not everybody has that way of thinking.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. There was a third hand here, yes? And then you are the last hand. That way. We call it age before beauty.
Greetings to you all, and I would like to thank the Sawidians for being here, and I would like to thank the Trailblazers for making this program a success. So my question is based on technology and mental health. So what measures are going to be implemented to make sure that the technology does not infiltrate with the strategies to implement it on mental health? Because if you can look at the first industrial revolution, women were affected by the technology. It did not improve their lives, but the technology was made to make the lives easier. It ended up making the children working so that they can also support their families. The second and the third industrial revolution also increased welfare and but it also increased war, because war was mostly focused on, especially the creation of weapons. Now that we are in the fourth industrial revolution, how are we going to ensure that this AI technology is not going to increase chances of the mental health issues? Because now the technology is increasing the social standards, and it's helping to spread propaganda instead of helping us. So it is positive and negative, but are the strategies that we are implementing going to affect us like the first, second, and third industrial revolution, or are they going to work this time? So what is being implemented to make them work? And secondly, about financial literacy, how are we going to assist in making sure that our education system has financial literacy involved? So personally, my dad used to give me books. The first book he gave me was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He told me that he is a poor dad. He can't tell me anything about money. But instead, he would give me this book so that it can guide me to a better path. So now that I've read this book, I've realized many concepts about money that I never knew. And personally, looking at this, they say change starts within you. And I think personally, I'm gonna do a channel explaining to everyone about these books that I've read, like The Richest Man in Babylon and The 12 Week Year. Once I read these books, I thought maybe I'm gonna be financially free, but now I had a problem of implementation. It's not that there's a lack of knowledge, but lack of implementation also exists. So those are the two questions I have for you.
I just wanted to say you've hit it. My research for my studies is exactly on why we cannot implement decisions that we take. Over to you, Griselda. Dr. Griselda.
And I'm glad that you added that DL before my name. Because the question that I would like to pose goes to, it's actually a challenge, not just a question, to the Vice-Chancellor and some of the policymakers in the Institute. I'm asking if there's a way of finding a program that would adopt artists. I mean, I'm tired of seeing one more artist where people have to contribute towards their burial. They're living in abject poverty. We see them on our television screen. Sometimes you're acting a rich guy and people believe that you are rich because of that character. And they wonder why you then live in such squalor. Because that's a sector that is just so abused, underappreciated. I don't know how many times whenever you're asked what are your rates, when you send them, it's like, can't we just give you this? I'm not going to mention any organizations that do that, because some of the things we do out of love. So I'm asking if there's a possibility of having a program with academic institutions. Unisa, as a trailblazer, can lead on this one, where artists are adopted, there's financial incentive, there's transfer of skills, because many of them have so much to give, and unfortunately, reality is you are as good as your last action cut.
Thank you. The challenge is presented next to the person sitting next to you, fortunately.
And
Mama Lulu?
Just a last plea that South Africans, we have a tendency of using these gadgets. I beg you, it's not easy to save money when you don't have consistent income. That notion of just asking people, why are they dying in poverty? Why didn't they save money? If I've acted for 6 months and I have no income in the next 6 months, I have nothing to save. Policies lapse and I would not have money to either be buried or go to a hospital. There's nothing as sad as seeing a famous person in a very sickly state at a private or public hospital, because then they turned into a joke. And it really is sad. These people entertain us in our homes. We love to hate them. I see program director, but I was very passionate about this point. And please be mindful of how you use the gadget in speaking, especially when you see an artist instructor. Thank you.
Thank you, Griselda. Mama Lulu, before you hijack the mic.
Thank you. I thought it would be.
No, I did, Mama. I did.
Thank you very much. Let me first add to what Dr. Griselda has said. Congratulations. She is talking about artists. My question is, there's something we're not doing right. We are the most talented, culturally, music. Miriam Makeba is world-known, world-renowned artist. So many of our artists, Haifa Semenya, but where are they today? Where is Miriam Makeba's house? In Guinea, where she lived in exile, her house is a huge museum. Tina, what do we have to show? I just want to say, when you talk to the Minister of Arts and Culture, I wish I could go. Let's talk about where is the legacy? How do we promote and support? Look at the American artists. They are the richest people in America today. Both black and white artists. They are the most famous, renowned, and respected people in the USA. What is wrong with us? We have better artists than they even have, better music, whatever. I just want to say, Rekupile. Yes, I don't even know where you work. I don't even know if I want to go and see your work and other artists. Where are you? How do you market yourselves? Organize, popularize. We must come on board, not, but leaders. Lastly, technology. It is so important. Africa is leading. Bombesa, Bo Ghana, Bo Nigeria. Where is South Africa? Why don't we have our Silicon Valley? Where is it? Why don't we have M-Pesa here in South Africa? CP, Sisemva, Kodwa were the biggest economy in this continent. Kodwa when it comes to technology, we are way behind. Abantwana bethu should be on par with Americans, on par with Canadian kids, Chinese kids. Kodwa yingxaki. So I think as women, we need to say every school must have a computer. From preschool up to wherever. But you must lead us, Nina, young ones. Tina were born before technology. Just like thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mama. I think the founders of Sawid can be happy about one thing, and this makes me so happy as well. Young people are standing up and are speaking and are quite integrated. And I think you should really give yourself a pat in the back for that. There's a very insistent hand. I'm actually scared if I don't give her, she's going to follow me. No, there. Yeah, Kikanene say Unisa-Sawid dialogue up and not long ago. Okay, guys, please just straight to the point. We've really run out of time. Let me start with the lady there, and then we'll come back to you. Just please, not a long.
Dumelang.
Hello.
I would like to start by saying Happy Women's Month. My name is Pindile Machokani from a township called Bopani. I'm not going to be more sensitive about the big English because I'm a township girl.
Yes, girl.
I'm just going to state the challenges of technology that we are facing in the townships. There's a serious crisis about technology of cyberbullying in schools. Now our, let's say at schools, this thing of technology, it was supposed to be something for information and to integrate ourselves and growing, to be enlightened about technology. But now our kids, they don't take this technology well because they start to abuse it. As women, we are forming part and cells of the SGB in schools. And this thing is a challenge because you will find suicide thoughts. You will find a kid commit suicide because of cyberbullying. They take this thing of social media at home. Because when we grow up, we had body, one life, body, teenage pregnancy, so in love life. So in schools, encourage social media. Department of Sports, I think they are sleeping in Jude. Because the artists, what does Department of Sport doing in schools to encourage our young people to celebrity, or how they must supposed to so I think this thing technology was also introduced in schools. You can give them a computer, then after having that computer, what's going to happen?
Okay, let's give her.
Molweni bazali, ngunomonde wakwamfukeng from the Umuntu Ngobuntu Ngabantu. Dr. Charity Ndikuwe. I was born and raised in Ngenyindlela Mhlawumbe, and then I became a deputy parent at a very young age before I had my own. And then I got married. They said, "Kuyanyanyezelwa." Now when uthi kumyingulo leyo, explain it to me uba ndigule xa kukuphi, because ndiyanyamezela ndiyi-deputy parent.
then ndigule kuphi, unyango lwam luyintoni.
Yo. Deputy parents, mna ndabaleka guys, glande bu deputy parent. When they call at home and they are reporting somebody, I'm like, okay, yo, I wonder. And sasngeni next, yo, it's stress. Somebody is gonna be dumped today because they took their ring in the bathrooms and they didn't take it back. So Mdasekaya, you are going to be dumped. And Sawid is not going to sort you out at that level. Take your ring. All right, I think we can now happily hand over to you. I'm so sorry, I hear Dr. Peko has had to exit because I was hoping we'll start with her now and then she can say something, but I was told that she has exited because she's got another meeting. Please apologize to her for me because I wanted to go back to her. In that order of how you decide to speak, but just know between the three of you have 10 minutes. Share it.
I think I'll respond first to that very powerful question. And you hit the nail on the head because I think what we fail to understand is that as human beings, without pathology or the things and the labels that we put on, there are things and experiences that we go through that come at a cost. And whether or not it's culture, whether or not it's things that we used to, there's a cost that we pay. So in the same way that if you eat a poor diet, at some point, diabetes and all these things, if things happen to you and you don't acknowledge them and you don't count them as trauma and all those things, it's not about a label of being depressed or anxiety or all those things. Those things come as a result of not acknowledging some of the things that we've had to endure, some of the things that have happened to us that we were not able to work through and see, that then become these disorders that we talk about. And so if there's one thing that I'd like everyone to take from today is that everything that we do, whether it's making money and then being humble and all those things, using technology and all those things, come with a mind that is well, comes with emotions that are well. You cannot be creative, you cannot work, you cannot reach your full potential unless your mental health and your mental wellness is taken care of. And where it all starts is about acknowledging that even a rock, if you put a rock under too much pressure, at some point it will also shatter. And that the pressure that we face, the things that have happened to us, need to be acknowledged. At the very least, Uti, something went wrong, something happened to us, and what do we do with that?
Thank you so much to the young lady that asked the question about gatekeeping and how to infiltrate spaces that seem impossible to get into, right? I think Usisi already acknowledged the great thing that Sawid has done by making sure that this conversation is intergenerational. I can see that there's like young people here, you know, medium, and it's just beautiful to witness all of those stages of life. Firstly, my love, I think you are one of the most fortunate generations, if there's such a thing, because you were born in a time where your phone is literally everything you need for visibility to happen for you. A lot of people in your generation have literally built careers from their homes. So you don't wait for a casting agent to deem you worthy. You first do the ideological work yourself, and then you put your camera on and you put your work out. So there you go. You start where you are, and you start with what you have. Right? So that's one thing about your generation. In fact, I was listening to an interview with Keke Palmer, and I'm sure you know her, famous American actress. She said the same thing. She said, I went for millions of auditions. And the people she was talking to were like, what, you? Why wouldn't they take you? She said, you'd be surprised how much rejection I endured. Until I, as Keke Palmer, decided, I have an iPhone. I'm going to do something about it. They then came to her. That's the kind of creativity you want them to come to you. When they come to you, you get to dictate the terms of this transaction. You'll have so much power when that happens. And then the second thing I want to encourage you to do is think collaboration. Yes, you may do this, whatever you guys call it, social media content creation. You may do it alone at home, but look at people who care about the things you care about and begin to align yourself with them. Often they've gone far ahead of you in numbers and in reach, and they've gotten the credibility that you still need because you haven't commenced. So align yourself, DM somebody. The worst thing they're going to say is no. but you'll never know until you get that no, right? And then research. You're talking about, okay, what if I have no access to Gates and Mackenzie? Yeah, not everyone will have access to a home minister, right? Even though he's one of the coolest people, actually. But I have to say that don't worry about people there. Like again, I want to make an example with Nomza Mumbata. I'm so proud of her. Nomza Mumbata started off on Bomb Productions, production company. She's an actress on Isibai. Today, Nomza Mumbata is an executive producer on Isheka Ulembe, which is internationally acclaimed, right? How did that happen? I saw on McGee's podcast, they were talking to the other executive owners, and they're Caucasian, white people. So McGee is fascinated. How did Nomzambo end up being an executive producer? It's high time. Because if we have Caucasian people telling our stories, well and good, we are a diverse culture, we are mixed in South Africa, but this is the problem even with Black Panther, where we have all the executive producers of Black Panther, which made $500 million US, being white. Yet they're telling a story about Black excellence. It's a problem. So it was time Nomzambo got in there. For me, she's literally done such a great, demonstration of the fact that it's time to sit at the table now. I've given you my talent, now I'm going to be a decision maker. It can happen for you. And then Umama, this is my last comment. Umama, beautiful lady. I love your outfit, Ma. Gorgeous, gorgeous. She asked, how do we find you? Mam Lulu. Mam Lulu, you asked a question about, again, how are we found? How are we seen? Just the same thing that I said to the young lady. Visibility is controlled by, I'm the custodian of how I want to be seen. In my industry, interior design is very luxury inclined, so it's referrals, because not everyone can have access. It's literally disposable income. It's people that are like, or architects. I get a lot of work and referrals from architects. So like there's a project, there's a house worth X amount of millions, but we have this little budget. For us, it's always the little budget, but we take it. What can we do? But essentially, that's how we do it. But also, I've done Visi magazine, we've done top billing, so we've done television, and we've done certain things to position ourselves. But to make sure, like I said to her, that I do not disappear, I am launching a podcast. And that podcast is going to unpack the money in the creative space, because I want to talk contracts. I want to talk to people like Connie Ferguson, who now owns a company, literally. Let's talk about from actor to now being an employer. Let's unpack contracts. Let's actually, because all these things are secrets. We want to know. Natasha Tehane being on Blood and Water on Netflix, what was that contract? How long is she going to be sustained? Do people consider that she's now a mother? She's not just a little girl anymore. She also needs to actually build a life with this creative thing. Thank you.
I am going to try and fly through the responses. So the first, there was a question about technology and mental health and how tech can be used for positive impact without exacerbating mental health incidences. And I would just like to draw, this is where the relationship between a platform like Wakamoso and Sawid is so important. So I spoke about the drive to create a database of unemployed social workers. Now, firstly, how many people in our communities know what social workers do, right? There's that question first, the issue of understanding and education of what social workers do, what those services are, right? So when you have a conversation where there's very clearly a gap, there's something that's not connecting, where you have people who have a heart for this work, because that's what this work is. It requires somebody who is called to it. As an anecdote, when I was doing my final year at Wits studying law, they allocate you to different law clinics, and I was in the family law clinic, and that is when I decided that I was not going to practice law at all, because it wasn't fancy, it wasn't glamorous. You were dealing with real people's real problems. People who wanted access to their children, women who were begging for divorces because my husband got into gambling and he sold everything in the house, left me and the children, and we need to figure it out. And I figured it out, and I went and I did better, and now the house has been extended and all of these things. But now he's come back and he's daring me to divorce him because he's saying I'm going to get 50% of everything anyway, right?
and I decided, next 5 days, thank you very much, right? But you're looking at the fact that this is a calling. People are called to this work. And because people are called to this work, if communities don't understand what the work is to begin with, they then don't even care to know who in their community has qualified and essentially thrown their hat in the ring and said, I'm willing to do this work. So when you partner, when an organization like Sawid partners with a tech platform like Wakamoso, and it could be anybody, what we're saying is these people exist in our communities. You could have a next door neighbor who's a social worker and you do not know. And beyond that, it is these unemployed social workers who are then observing our communities and saying, what are the ills that affect our communities? What skills do we have? How do we match the need of our communities? And that, I feel, is one of the cornerstones of how you use technology to combat these things. If anybody in the room has the ability to go and either watch on Netflix or by bootleg a series or a movie called Adolescence, it teaches you, and this is now segueing into the cyberbullying piece, it teaches you the truth about what is happening in these schools. There's a young man in the movie who, his father is one of the police who's investigating a murder where one of their peers in the school is accused of murdering a young girl. Now it lays out the story of, did he do it? Didn't he do it? But this young man speaks to his father when his father walks into the classroom to try and talk to the young people as a police officer and a person in authority and say, do you know what happened? His son pulls him aside and says, look at this message on Instagram. What do you think this message says? And he says, well, it's hearts and this and it's emojis. This is what he says. He says, that's not what it says. There is an entire language that exists that I don't know, that many of the women and mothers in this room don't know. And what it tells you then is, in the same way that again, an invisibility crisis, there's language that is invisible to us. And because it is invisible to us, we then take it on face value and think this must be what it means. And when his son explained that this young man, you see those hearts and those emojis, they're actually not hearts and emojis. What they are is a call to him, and they're calling him a misogynist and a podcast bro and all of these things. And so you imagine young people going into school environments where there is a language that their parents don't know, which they then hide because why are you so stressed about school, right? So if you have an opportunity, please watch that, because what it allows us to do is to delve into the seriousness of how tech and things like cyberbullying converge. And to kind of answer that, it's called adolescence. So not adolescence as in many of them, it is the state of adolescence with a CE. To then close off that particular component or that aspect of cyberbullying, there is an article that was shared with us, a couple of articles, one by the Stanford Social Innovation Review, and then another one that was written for the Daily Maverick by Henley Africa. And both of them speak about the importance of allowing communities to own and lead research, right? If we're saying in communities that the challenge is school safety and cyberbullying, and where is that data? But that data should be, that work, that research, those insights should be led by the community. Why? Because increasingly, the world where, the world of funding and the people who have deep pockets are starting to ask about justice in research, and they are starting to ask about what it is that how communities are owning their voices. And one of the most important things that I read out of that line, out of the Stanford article, was the notion or the motto that those who are closest to the problems are also closest to the solutions. So when we start empowering communities with the technology that allows them to bring together data and start generating their own insights, then they can see themselves better. And then there's a last thing, technology for education and financial education and all of that. There are lots of platforms. I think we just don't know that they exist. And then
re kopile ke a hao wena ausi, but there's something that I cottoned onto when Dr. Griselda was speaking about the adoption of artists. So there's somebody I know who's got a heart and a passion for the creative sector. And they're starting a movement. Their tagline really is creativity is our superpower, on this continent specifically. If you've ever watched, I didn't know that the song Neria was a song that existed outside of a movie, because eventually, years later, when I heard it, I had watched the movie Neria on SABC3 when they were running African films, right? So if you've ever lost yourself in a story that you could resonate with, if you've ever lost yourself in a song after you've gone through the tumble dryer of Umjolo and them go, if you've ever been in a church service with your hands lifted, with your arms lifted, lost in the moment, lost in that spirituality, then you cannot run away from the importance of creativity and how that heals us as a people. And the sad part is how we undervalue that very critical, intangible component of our societies. So this gentleman, he's part of a group. They're saying creativity is our superpower, and that's what's driving. But they've started a movement, and they are looking to get a petition signed to have the creative sector on this continent and across the world be recognized as under the G20 umbrella. So to have a creative 20 umbrella, and that then starting to lead the charge for the changes and the things that are formalized in the creative sector. So there's work that is happening and technology is coming through, but it's also communities owning their voices. Thank you.
All I can say is, when ugoa ilando ngazophinda ndibize ngoba bazonijamela abamama etafuleni, stay away from love songs. That's from your big sister. When you're going through that thing, stay away from love songs. You don't have to know. And then Prof now wants to speak, Betuna and Nkosiam. Oh, you want to respond to Griselda. Prof, you have a second. Please, can you give Prof a... Yeah.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I think the question that was asked by Dr. Griselda is quite important. Here to my right is Professor Mahanu. She has, out of the concern for maths and science, which also impacts the creatives, as the university, we have created a maths and science center, and we are working with basic education and higher DHET to try to look at how UNISA can partner with most schools in the rural areas, but also in the urban centers or areas where maths is often counseled. And I think this is a national, if not a revolutionary act, because we recognize that for young women or even for boys to access universities, they are left out because of maths. And therefore, that's an area that I'd like to promise that we've already invested in. The second part, I think UNISA is committed to adopting creatives and artists. Thank you. If you look about this, if you look at UNISA, the forebears, Miriam Makeba, if you look at who has been honored by the university in the honorary degree systems, you'll realize that the artists have always been at the center. What we may need to do is to, out of this project between UNISA and Sawid and the Development Bank and the UNISA Women's Forum, is to then have a partnership that is clearly stated around how we can do this adoption through engaged scholarship. Because one of the pillars of universities is to ensure that we don't just take your taxes and do the science, but we resource the state. And I think if we can think about a partnership model that gives the artists the opportunities. Professor is a lawyer. He says the contracting part is what makes, Professor Farisani, is what makes the artists lose the most. What we can do as Unisa women and Sawid is to look at the contracting and the contracts of the artists, because that might be, that's what will help. And she says through the Women's Forum and Sawid, we can look at how, even next week, we look at the immediate actions that salvage the contradictions artists experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. So we're done with the panel and my job is done. And I do want to say that when I was asked, when Lusanda called me, she threw the name of Mam Thoko to me. I don't know whether she knew that I can't say no to her, and this is my biggest problem. I can't say no to her. But thank you very much for your respect, for your engagement, and for listening. Earlier on, the minister, and I'd like you not to forget this, the minister offered to help you put something together, and I know that if she commits to something, she's going to do it. We just have to follow her up around technology and women and bringing all the role players in government to drive that particular agenda. Ever since I've known her, she's run a program for women in each of the departments that she's been. So I trust that she was not just overwhelmed by the numbers here in the stage. It's something she's going to be able to do. So let's follow that up. And I wanted to suggest, Lusanda, that I feel this conversation is not finished. And I think that we can take it into the webinar. You can actually run webinar series and bring back these young women into the conversation and take it forward. And the last thing I want to say is that I know that you have a leadership program for young girls, and I am, as I indicated earlier on, I am a leadership coach. And so what I want to offer back to Sawid, because Sawid has also done a lot for me, it's like a home. Sawid is like a home. You come in when you want them, when you think, hey, the mothers, let me run away for a while, I'll come back again. You run away, but you'll find a way. You'll find home. You leave home, you come back, you find home is still loving and receptive to you. So my own personal offer is that I'm available to work with you around that work, just with the young girls that we're working with on the leadership program. It's something. The other thing I'm good at is connecting people. So I'm very happy to help you to connect where you need assistance, especially those who are not available in government. I have a way of finding them. So thank you very much. And I'm going to exit because I told you now I don't have a comfortable job in government. I'm hustling. I'm learning so many things about life. So I'm going to leave. I have another engagement in Joburg, I think at 2:30. But UCO is going to take over. And before I leave, there's gifts that they are bringing for you ladies. And before I leave, I want to invite our performer. I heard her name. I thought I heard it in my mind. But Tiakuka Betunana. Loveline Matumo. She's going to serenade us with a performance, and then CEO will come back and close it, and then you can eat. Just know that I'm not going to eat because I'm going, so take a little, an extra spoon, which was going to be my food, and eat it on my behalf. Thank you very much, and thank you for the invite, Sawid. Thank you.
Please enjoy this. Cool. Quando sono sogno all'orizzonte manca le parole. Lo so che luce in una stanza quando sorry technology iverkakan.
Wow. Your love line. I'm not sure whether I should say you should have started or finished, but I'm not sure if there's still words that we must say after that. We are at the tail end of our program. We promised rich, fat. Was it fat? I'm also pleasantly surprised. I'm not pleasantly surprised. I said to the panelists earlier this week when we were having a briefing session, I said every time we have this dialogue, each year we always say, this year was the best ever. I said to them, no pressure, but I left them with that. So I feel like they must know this year was the best ever. The one thing that I consistently heard from all our speakers was that we must implement. Our minister started off by saying, engagements that do not foster change are meaningless. So when I conclude, I want to challenge you. Everyone said they have a phone. There's something that is said about the power of one. I want you to reach out for your phone. If it's not your phone, it's your notepad. I know that some people still prefer to scribble on a notepad. What will you implement? What will you implement? Write it down. That's yours. I'm not even going to ask you what you wrote. What will you implement? We said that we are not trying to boil the ocean here. All that you are probably trying to do is to create a wave. That's how a movement is formed. So what will that be for you? Write it down. Sawid is busy trying to create and continue riding those waves. We have a young girls development program, leadership program. We are proud that next week we are graduating or recognizing 25 of them after they have successfully completed a program that we took them through, teaching them, exposing them to various leadership skills and ways in which they can become better versions of themselves as they grow up. We are recognizing them next week. We are so proud of them. But we know that if we are going to be having another program of the same nature in the Eastern Cape starting in September. But we don't want to just be ticking off and saying, we've done this one and move on. We are already worried about these 25 young girls because that is just the beginning. We've only scratched the surface. What will your contribution as a Sawidian be to that program? We don't know all of you and your different skill sets. Somebody said, this room is rich. It was the minister. She says, I look around and I just see talent and richness. So what will you contribute in helping these young girls? Because they are only between ages of 12 and 18. 1 year program, really. There's more that they can learn. So I want to challenge you to consider what you can deposit towards that. Now I'm going to hand over, and that really from us as Sawid is our ask of your contribution and what you can add in just riding and creating a wave that will drive the movement. So we are very, very thankful to our speakers, our panelists who have made today's program as rich as it was, but the biggest challenge is we are saying, let it not just be words. Let it be words that translate into actions, that translate into implementation. I'm now going to hand over to Dr. Sizakele, who is going to do our vote of thanks. Know that she's the one who's standing between us and our lunch. Wink, wink, no pressure. So I'm going to hand over to her as she's going to do the closing words of gratitude for us. Over to you, Doc.
Watinda bafazi, Wathinta imbokodo. Thank you very much. I would like to stand on the protocol that has been observed before me. I will try to be very brief because time is against us. I would like to thank all the program directors, Ms. Yoli Swamakasi, Chuli Zigalala, and Ngobile Mhlweni for driving this ship. They did a fantastic job. Can we clap hands for them? I also want to take this opportunity to thank all the people who make this meeting, this gathering, a success. Some of them, they're working behind scenes. Can we clap hands for them? I also want to thank our Vice Principal, the Principal and Vice-Chancellor for the opening of this ceremony. She has reminded us about the contributions that women have made in this country, and she also reminded us that women are doing a lot of work, and yet nothing much is being documented about them in the history books. We don't see much. We are just reading about men who are heroes, and a little bit is being said about women. She also touched about a lot of roles that women are performing, and yet nothing is being said about them. Vice-Chancellor, I think today we have observed that Sawid and Unisa, it's also working together as partners in promoting your Catholic niche area, the Busadi, the feminist theorization. Today we put it in action. We had a dialogue about issues that are still affecting women in this day and age in our democratic country. We also had Sis Vatiswa from Sawidi. She is the executive director. She also reminded us about the importance of these dialogues. She also told us that we have said a lot. These dialogues are not new, but there is really nothing wrong for us to go back and revisit what we have said if we don't see any change in those spaces. She also questioned the way mental health issues are being dealt with in the country, because when we talk about mental health issues, we always think about people who are not normal, and yet that's not the case. It means about self-awareness. We need to be aware of what is happening in our lives. If there is something wrong, then we need to consult the psychologists and anybody who can assist us to perform better then. We also had Dr. Gordons, who also reminded us about the importance of these dialogues. She also congratulated Unisa and Sawid in their partnership of having these dialogues, because these dialogues are very important in the country. Because through this dialogue, we are able to remember and recall what the art or the history of this country is all about. We also learn about the struggles, the challenges that women are still going through. She also reminded us that technology, we should see it as a tool that we can use it for transformation or transforming our lives. Then we also had the panel of speakers. I'm trying to summarize, colleagues, so that I don't take a lot of your time. We had the panel of speakers. They touched on different issues. We had someone who was talking about women and economics. We had somebody who was talking about mental health, technology, and also the arts. So they reminded us that we must look at technology and use it as something positive, because the world is moving. There's AI around us. Then we must not be left behind. We need to join in and see how we can use this technology to bring economy, to change our lives, and also to contribute in the economy and putting our lives, making our lives better. We also learned that we need to take care of our mental health, learn to consult when we are not feeling well. And then we also learned about the challenges that artists in this country are experiencing, that it is important that they start learning about financial literacy. Not just them, all of us, we need to learn about financial literacy. And also to understand that when we have money, we have power. We need to be money wise. So the speaker says, let us stop being humble and being broke. We need to take care of our lives. Colleagues, I think let me just end here. There is lunch that is going to be saved, so we are going to start focusing the first table. Can we allow them to go and dish and then come back, and then it will be the second, and then we can all go. Let us respect that protocol, colleagues. Ms. Luyanda would like to give gifts. Vice Principal, can you please come to the front, and Dr. Gordon? We also want to thank all of you for coming to this event and making this event a success. And please mark it. We are going to meet again next year, same place, same venue. Thank you very much.